Call to order the regular city council meeting for February 15th, 2023, 6:09 p.m. Madam, roll call.
Mayor Ronnie Felder,
Here.
Chairperson Kashamba Miller Anderson,
Present.
Chair Pro Tem Shirley Lanier,
Here.
Councilperson Trodrick McCoy,
Here.
Councilperson Julia Botel,
Here.
Councilperson Douglas Lawson,
Here.
City Manager Jonathan Evans,
Present.
Interim City Clerk Tawana Smith is present, City Attorney Don Wynn.
Here.
You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
All right, we'll have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Dr. Botel. Do we have any additions, deletions, or substitutions? None?
None from staff, Madam Chair.
All right. Any disclosures, council? Have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Councilperson Douglas Lawson,
Adopting the agenda.
Yes.
Councilperson Julia Botel,
Yes.
Councilperson Trodrick McCoy,
Parliamentary inquiry. So if we can pause for a second, I got a question. So we're adopting the agenda after
After what?
we did additions and deletions?
We did it. We went down the agenda.
Well, I guess I'm really confused because I got an agenda in front of me that's from February 1st, and I'm like, I know we've already handled some of this stuff, so I'm sorry. Am I the only one?
They didn't fix the date.
I mean, I'm looking at the one on the computer.
Okay. Well, if you don't mind, so we're all on the same page, can we reset? Because there may be some items that I want to add or even delete. But the agenda in front of me is dated February 1st, and this is what we dealt with last time and not what we should be having tonight.
I know, but we have it on the computer, and then I'm sure we did agenda reviews. Do you have any that you remember?
Yeah,
Or if
the
you
fire
look,
assessment.
huh?
The fire assessment,
Okay, the veto one, you want to do what with it?
remove it?
So you want to go back to additions and deletions?
Correct.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, if I can elaborate, I'm relying on what's in front of me, right?
Huh?
And I'm scouring through to figure out the actual agenda item number, and it's the wrong agenda. So that's why I'm asking you if we could reset and take a step back.
Sure, of course. It is, I think it's correct on the computer, so if you want to pull it up there while they work on trying to get
Okay, I'm here now. I got it together now.
You got it? Okay. All right, so we're back to additions, deletions, and substitutions. And you want to remove 11C. 11C?
Correct, that's an offer, yes, ma'am. And then I want to also add an item.
All right, so Dr. Botel, are you in favor of removing 11C? You got to look on the computer. This one is not, I'm just using this one in my hand to go down the formalities. Do we have any agendas out there for the public that we can get? All right. So the veto for the fire assessment is what Mr. McCoy is looking to have removed. So are you in favor of that, Dr. Botel?
I'm not in favor of removing it.
Okay. Chair Pro Tem, are you in favor of removing that?
Yes.
You're in favor of having it taken
Yes.
off? Okay. Mr. Lawson,
Yes, Madam Chair.
you're in favor of taking it off? All right. And then Mr. McCoy, yes? All right. So when you want to take a vote, or are we good with that? Take the vote? Okay, so somebody want to make a motion, Mr. McCoy?
Move to remove item 11C from the agenda.
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk?
Councilperson Douglas Lawson,
Yes.
Councilperson Botel,
No.
Councilperson McCoy,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Lanier,
Yes.
Chairperson Miller Anderson.
Yes.
That vote passes, Madam Chair, with Councilperson Botel and Chairperson Miller Anderson dissenting.
I said yes. I said yes.
Oh, you said yes, I'm sorry, it passed, with Councilperson Botel dissenting.
Okay. All right, anything else?
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
in order to handle board appointments for the audit committee, can that item be pulled and discussed under regular agenda?
What, the 2A?
Yes, Madam Chair.
All right,
Madam Chair,
yes.
can we add regular item 11A to consent?
Are you all in favor of doing that? I guess we might as well just go ahead and make a motion, so we don't do it twice. So Mr. Mr. Lawson, want to make a motion to remove that?
Motion to move item 11A, resolution 032-23 to consent.
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk?
Councilperson Douglas Lawson,
Yes.
Councilperson Botel,
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Lanier,
Yes.
Chairperson Miller Anderson.
Yes.
That vote passes.
All right, anyone else? So, 2A. Ms. Smith, are we putting the 2A at the beginning of resolutions and regular agenda?
Yes.
Okay. Any other additions, deletions, or substitutions? All right, disclosures. I have a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Councilperson Lawson,
Yes.
Councilperson Botel,
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Lanier,
Yes.
Chairperson Miller Anderson.
Yes,
That vote passes, Madam Chair.
all right.
You want to take 2A now? I mean,
No,
you
I
wanna
was
do the
trying to
consent?
read, I was trying to find the information to read for the consent agenda, but it doesn't seem to be on here. Basically, it's a routine city council business. The consent agenda is approved by a single majority vote. Items may be removed for open discussion at the request of the mayor or any city council member. Have a motion to approve the consent agenda
So
with item 2A being moved to regular agenda item.
motion to approve the consent agenda with that change.
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk?
Also, too, Madam Chair, the consent is going to include item 11A.
Yes, I'm sorry, an 11A.
Councilperson Lawson,
Yes.
Councilperson Botel, Councilperson McCoy,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Lanier,
Yes.
Chairperson Miller Anderson.
Yes,
That vote passes, Madam Chair.
all right. And I'm sorry, we didn't have any public comment cards for consent, did we?
No, ma'am.
All right. All right, regular agenda item 2A.
So for item number 2A, there is a resolution to be read into the record. However, it didn't print on the agenda, so I'm going to read it first.
Okay.
Resolution number 40-23, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, authorizing the appointment of members to the Audit Committee and providing for an effective date.
We have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Madam Clerk, I'm sorry, Madam.
Well, wait. That's actually not even proper. So I think we almost have to have a discussion first because the resolution doesn't set forth who those actual members are. So I think not having the motion, agreeing to hearing the presentation is what I would motion for, but certainly not for approval. So let me just clarify that.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
We can, yes.
Just, I guess as a point of order, 2A was moved to the regular agenda. Prior to the regular agenda, you do have ordinances on first reading. So I don't know if you want to continue to take 2A out of order. Or if you want to do 9A under ordinances on first reading first, and then.
I'm sorry, yeah, I skipped pages. I skipped the page, that's what happened. So I'm on the wrong page, sorry about that. So 9A is what we should be taking first.
Well, Madam Chair,
Yes.
does it really matter? I mean, she's already seated here. We already set a motion on the floor to hear the presentation. I think certainly going forward, we can make note of it, but
Is that okay, Ms. Nguyen?
You can, if someone would make a motion to take 2A out of order, then that would be,
move to take item 2A
Second.
ahead of the
All right.
ordinances.
Madam Clerk?
Councilperson Lawson,
Yes.
Councilperson Botel,
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Lanier,
Yes.
Chairperson Miller Anderson.
Yes,
That vote passes.
all right. Ms. Elaine?
Madam Chair, members of the board, if I can have the internal auditor, Ms. Elena Georgieff, make this presentation.
All right, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Board, Mr. Evans, Ms. Nguyen. I'm here tonight to speak about the 2 vacancies on the Audit Committee. Those 2 vacancies have been open for some time. We tried advertising on several occasions. However, we were not very successful. And in December, I took it upon myself to reach out to all CPAs with a City of Riviera Beach address and personally implore them, invite them to consider the opportunity to sit on our audit committee. As a result, I received 4 applications, which I included in the package. And all of them, of course, are CPAs and meet the qualifications set by the ordinance. So, per discussion, I ask you to vote, and the 2 that collect the highest number of votes will get appointed.
All right, okay, do you have a particular way you want us to do the vote, or Ms. Nguyen or Mr. Evans?
Madam Chair, if I may,
Go ahead.
I believe the clerk has set forth a process that can allow for the board to go through each of the candidates, and then the candidate with the highest number of votes would be the top 2 that ultimately would be selected in that position, Madam Clerk?
Yes, we would call the names out for you in alphabetical order. You guys would just vote on that candidate, and the 2 with the highest votes would be selected.
Okay.
So the first person would be Jean Borno, B-O-R-N-O. All in favor of appointing that particular applicant, please raise your hand.
Or do you want us to
before
say
we even
yes?
do that, I want to ask questions because there's a couple things that I'm not certain of before we go to that point. So, Madam Chair?
Yeah, and then we probably should say yes or something versus the raising the hand for the record.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very important. In fact, I was just noticing a meeting where folks in the meeting didn't say on the record what their votes was, and that became a real issue. So I think you're right. We have to actually say it on the record instead of raising our hands, because that'll get us in trouble with the Sunshine Law.
All
But I do have a question.
Go ahead.
So, Ms. Georgie, thank you for all of the work you've done trying to recruit persons to serve on boards, and I know that has to be tough, especially with a unique skill like an accountant. I don't have the ordinance that set forth the authority of the audit committee in front of me, but you may be able to recall this. Is there a requirement that they have to be residents of the city?
Yes, sir. They have to be either a resident or a business owner.
Okay, well, sad to say, the first 2 that you have on the list aren't either.
I know 3 of them are residents, and the 4th one, her place of employment is within the city.
But that doesn't make her the business owner.
I agree.
And then the gentleman named, the very first person, I believe it was Benjamin.
Yes.
Did that address doesn't exist within the municipal boundaries. Now, I believe he may have the same zip code of 33404, but that doesn't necessarily mean he lives within the city of Riviera Beach, corporate limits. And on his application, he doesn't list the city, and on his resume, he doesn't list the city. But I can tell you, just from being here for all these years, that street doesn't exist within the municipal boundaries. So I think he may have gotten pulled into your list by way of his zip code, but we don't have a 42nd Avenue in our city.
Okay.
So, you know, and this is, I'm asking the board for some understanding on it, because clearly, you know, it's my understanding that that's nowhere within our municipal boundaries. So, you know, if this is a requirement that they have to be within the municipal boundaries or a resident of the city, then I think in itself, and I would ask the board to chime in, that he wouldn't be ineligible, in my opinion. And who am I? I mean, you know.
And this is, which one, Jones?
I think it's Benjamin. That could be it.
Yeah,
Do
Benjamin
you see
Jones.
the address, 42nd North or something like that? I think that's very likely one of the communities that's on the north and south side of Blue Heron, right around Racetrack and Burger King. Or it could be that area right off of a military trail called Palm Garden, which is more of a, it's a different community, I'll say that. And I apologize.
No need to apologize.
Okay.
And so what was your point that was made in regards to them being an employee versus the business owner?
Well, you know, I just don't want to commit someone to the board if they don't meet the requisite requirements. And my concern is 42nd Drive North, I don't recall that ever being within the municipal boundaries. And I wanted to make sure that that is, in fact, a requirement. That they have to be a resident?
Yes.
Absolutely, have to. Okay. Is anybody familiar with that, 42nd Drive North? Because I don't believe that it is.
That sounds like Thousand Oaks. I think there's some of the streets in there are high numbers.
Well, I can assure you.
I mean,
I
can
just
you
looked it up.
Google the address? Google Maps?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I thought that the advisory committees, if it was an advisory committee, that they didn't have to be from the city, but a committee, you know, like the pension committee, or it didn't have advisory in it, that they had to be from the city. Mr. Evans?
Sorry, Madam Chair.
I was asking, I was having a conversation with Miss Roseanne Brown for the Education Committee, Advisory Committee, and she was telling me at the time the reason why they put advisory committee in it was because if you put advisory in it, according to the charter, it did not have to be people from Riviera Beach. But if it didn't have advisory in it, it did have to be from Riviera Beach, like the pension committee and that kind of thing.
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes.
One of the challenges that you have with this particular board is that it is codified in an ordinance, and that's what is the challenge here. So the ordinance prescribes exactly what the requirements are, where in other committees and boards, you may not have anything that's codified in an ordinance, and so you do have a great flexibility on committee and task force and advisory board, but this is just enumerated in the ordinance.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'm looking at 7092 42nd Drive, which is just slightly west of 95. And the representative here tonight from our police
The
department says
trailer park,
That's that
the
park.
Burger
That's
King,
exactly
yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
That's that trailer park.
Yeah,
by Burger King.
so it's Riviera Beach.
All right,
So it's in the city.
so
Unincorporated.
I'm looking here too as well with Daphne Brown Hannah. I mean, it says Nassau, Bahamas, but then I think it has the Tropical address.
Yes,
So she works at Tropical, but she lives in the Bahamas?
yes. So just to speak on the subject, it has been very difficult to recruit or to find individuals willing to serve on the committee. And I just decided that I'll share all applications that came in.
Okay, but, I mean, they either meet the qualifications or they don't, and so if they don't meet them, they would not have made it to us, correct? Or you just gave us all of them?
Well, the criteria that I used was, like I said, anybody who holds a CPA license and is listed with an address within the city of Riviera Beach with the state of Florida. So this was the criteria that I used. So in the case of Miss Hannah, I realized that she does live in the Bahamas currently. However, with the technology that we have, if she was selected, we can certainly make it happen, that she can.
Yeah, I
Madam
don't
Chair,
agree with that.
That's impossible.
I don't agree with
She's
that
not
at
even
all.
a citizen. She doesn't even fall within the jurisdiction and authority of anything. So there's no possible way that she could, I mean, if she's not within, I mean, none of that works. But what I can offer you is let's just grab the low hanging fruit. The other two are Riviera Beach residents. It's clean cut.
Okay.
There's nothing to question about it.
All right.
And that's Henry Restucia and Jean Borno. And I apologize, I really do, because you remember I shared with you, me and my staff person went down this list to try to do the same exact thing, and we got met with a lot of,
All right, so is there
disinterest.
Madam Chair,
a motion to?
I make a motion to approve Henry Restuccia and Jean Borno for the Audit Committee.
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk.
Councilperson Lawson,
Yes.
Councilperson Botel,
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Lanier,
Yes.
Chairperson Miller Anderson.
Yes.
That vote passes, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
All right, so we'll go back to 9A, ordinance on first reading.
Ordinance on first reading. Ordinance number 4228, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, amending Chapter 26 of the city's Code of Ordinance entitled Minority Employment and Affordable Housing Opportunity Plan by adding the IHC-PUD and providing a mechanism for height bonus, by updating definitions and clarifying the purpose of Housing Trust Fund, by updating Section 26-6, by providing a mechanism for the post-construction conversion of resort hotel units to year-round residential units, by increasing the per unit in lieu of contribution rate, providing for severability and conflict, providing for codification, and for providing an effective date. Madam Chair, we do have one public comment card on this item. The acceptance of public comment cards are now closed.
Motion to approve ordinance number 4228.
Second. Mr. Evans?
Madam Chair and members of the board, if I could have the Director of Development Services, Mr. Clarence Sermons, to make this presentation.
All right, Mr. Sermons?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of council, Mr. Mayor, and Madam Attorney. Again, I am Clarence Sermons, Director of Development Services. I am before you to present Ordinance 4228. This is the second attempt to update the MEHOP ordinance to modernize it and make it more responsive to today's development environment in the city of Riviera Beach. There are the majority of the changes we proposed the last time this ordinance was before you, before it was repealed, are still in here. There are some things that have changed, and there are some things that you will be seeing for the first time. I will, during this presentation, give you a high-level overview of some of the major changes, and I will start with the beginning. In our definition section, we have added some additional terms that were not here but are now relevant terms in the area of affordable housing, such as workforce housing and attainable housing. In the section related to bonuses in 26-5, we've clarified the intent of bonuses section. We have added additional zoning districts, including the IHC PUD as a bonus category, as well as the resort hotel condo conversion as a bonus category. In the minority employment section, the previous version that you voted on, it had this section removed. It is back in this version of the ordinance. However, we have expanded it to add additional details to clarify what the responsibilities and requirements are of a developer receiving bonuses according to this section, as well as added some more details so that staff can effectively provide oversight of any developers that were in receipt of this bonus. One change here is that it does, for certain types of projects, including the IHC PUD zoning district, that it does require that they not only satisfy the housing component, but also the minority employment component of this ordinance.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, and?
And
What, Madam Chair, do we wait, or how do we address questions? Should we wait to the end?
Yes, please.
in section 26-7, related to the housing contribution component, we have expanded this section to clarify and add details on what documentation a developer must provide if they are intending to satisfy this section by providing affordable housing on site, or if they are paying the fee in lieu of. We have updated the fees to make them more reflective of today's market and what it takes to provide and develop affordable housing. And then finally, in section 26-9, we have clarified and updated the regulations related to policies and administration, including providing language regarding enforcement mechanisms that the city would have at its disposal in case there's any violations of this agreement. And that is a very brief summary of the changes here, and I am here for any questions that the board has.
All right. Questions? I'm sorry, public comment card.
Yes, Mr. Lloyd Brown.
How you doing?
Good evening.
On this affordable housing, I mean, I always hear that from y'all, but the houses I see being built in my neighborhood right now, Michael Jordan might be able to afford one, maybe LeBron James, but not none of the normal people I know. And I don't understand how you letting them build them up as quick as they are without any building inspectors. I mean, there was a house, affordable housing. It's built like so close to my neighbors, but it's not affordable. None of these houses are affordable. So where are you going to put them? Over there where Lozman got his property? I mean, honestly, how could you bring up affordable housing and jobs? And you know what? Life is just a circle, and we end up where we started. Where we started with y'all, we end up where we started, but a little worse condition. And it's a shame that all this y'all did and all that talking y'all did. I mean, is there a thing where you have to show up to these meetings or you come when you want to? I mean, the mayor, he don't be here much. I wouldn't mind getting that job. I was high on crack and I was at work 3 days at a time. I believe I can come over here and still maybe get on crack and still be here more than him. I mean, that's a lot of y'all. Every time I come over here, y'all talking about affordable, something affordable. I mean, I bet y'all can't even afford the houses that they're building in the neighborhood. And you up here taking our money. All y'all done gained a little weight there, so you must be eating pretty high on the hog. You might can afford these houses. Don't look at me like that, Trogic. You came around my neighborhood threatening me, so don't look at me like that. See, it's a couple other things I just kept to myself. You came way over my neighborhood.
Mr. Brown, please
I'm
stay on topic,
on
please.
the point. Look, affordable housing. Where in the hell are the affordable housing you talking about? I mean, look at Rock Callaway Amphitheater. You could have built some houses with that money for people who out there on Congress who gonna never own nothing. So how you talking about affordable when you putting all these people on the Indian reservation, modern day Indian reservation, Congress, and they glad to be in there, but they can't bring their families in there. So how you gonna say those are affordable? Those are affordable housing you talking about that they're not gonna never own? See, I own where I'm at, and I'm glad I do. But there, black people ain't anybody in my condition not gonna own any affordable houses, not in Riviera Beach. Not while we got black politicians like you, you and you, and you and you and you. We ain't gonna be able to afford nothing. I done looked all through YouTube and I see this in every neighborhood where there are black politicians. They talk about affordable housing. And the people on the streets are homeless. Y'all a trip. We end up right where we started and we in a worse condition.
Thank you. All right, comments from the board? Comments from the board?
Oh, Madam Chair, a question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Sermons, could you just review for me the parking regulations for the hotel conversions?
Yes, for hotel conversions, they are only eligible for this if they can prove they have adequate parking on site for it. Some developments overpark their sites when they develop them, and if that's the case and they have extra spaces to convert, they would be eligible. If they do not have excess spaces, they would not be eligible to convert resort units to condominiums.
Okay, and that's typically two spaces per unit. Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. McCoy?
Yes, Madam Chair, I was trying to get in 5 minutes ago. I know what you want to do in trying to keep the meeting moving, but I need some help, Mr. Evans and Mr. Sermons. I mean, we're talking about something very, very crucial here. You don't have a visual presentation, and it takes me 6 minutes to even respond to ask you to clarify something you said, and I don't even know where to go back to, especially being that there's not a presentation. This is a pretty extensive and, I might add, complex piece of legislation. Give us a little bit of help. I think this got published on Saturday, and I've still to date have not had the ability to go through it very finely. But in response to, I guess my question was about IHCPUD. You're saying that they're going to have to now meet both the MEHOP employment portion as well as the payment in lieu portion?
Correct. That's the staff recommendation.
What was it before, Mr. Sermons?
Before, a development could choose either the employment component or the affordable housing component to be eligible for the bonuses.
So why the change that you now recommend both items? Because, I share with you some of the concerns that I have, and without being able to actually point to what those employment requirements are now, help me understand why the change.
The intention of staff is to make sure that when the city gives very valuable bonuses to developments, that the city also benefiting. Since these are bonuses that are not by right, that the interests of the city are also considered when we are going over and beyond what's normally allowed by zoning. And we believe that affordable housing is a very important concern and interest of the city, but we also believe that employment is also. So the staff recommendation is that projects who are receiving millions of dollars in bonuses contribute to both of those areas of important interest of the city.
Okay, so clarify that it's not they're receiving millions, they're paying in and paying an additional payment in lieu of for those bonuses. So it's not that they're giving this just gratis per se, as you suggested. I want to go back to, I just got to this section 26-6. Have we, because I know we talked about this last week, I believe, and it appears that you've kind of reduced this to some sort of version of your recommendation. What happens if a person can't find 5 subtrades? And have we figured out when this employment agreement will be due? And what happens and what's the remedy if they don't or can't complete the minority employment? Do we revoke the density?
So before the project is approved, the applicant would have to provide this employment plan, and they would have to demonstrate that they have or will secure the required employment for the five, the sub-trades were the ones you asked about specifically. For those, they would have to prove that they already are engaged with them, or when it comes to the reporting component, which is additional language that was added, they would have to show in their reports that they have secured the required minority employment, and that when they continue to submit those reports, that they maintain those levels of employment that are required by the agreement. And there's also additional language added in section 26-9 that gives the city the ability to enforce violations of this agreement if they don't meet and maintain those requirements.
And explain those recommendations. How did you come about this self-reporting piece? Because, you know, when we spoke last week, it was still kind of up in the air, and I just want to understand how you're presenting to me right now in this board, and you're saying this is staff recommendation. How did you arrive at this recommendation? Are you looking at best practices? Tell me you got this from the city of Cincinnati, somewhere. I mean, help me out, Mr. Sermons.
Creating this document has been collaborative. My staff, as well as city administration, we've looked at peer municipalities in the county. We've also looked beyond them to find language that we found suitable for the city of Riviera Beach.
Right, but subs aren't hired until the construction phase. And I'm still confused as to how we're going to give a bonus, and they're going to build their plan to this bonus density with these additional units. And, you know, they may make very good intentions and a good faith effort. If they don't actually fulfill it, I want to know what happens. And, I mean, you're saying the code enforces it. What's that enforcement looks like? Can we shut them down? Can we revoke the bonus units? Mr. Sermons, if you can't answer that question, Mr. Sermons, and I know this is a lot, especially not having a visual presentation, how about we take that portion out? Because I don't want to sit here and set forth some legislation right now when we don't know how it's going to work. But when somebody submits a plan which, you know, costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, if they, for some reason, can't find electrical contractors, air conditioner contractors, plumbing contractors, carpet tile for persons, that how do we now take a step back off of these bonuses? And, you know, I'm submitting to you that I want to be able to support this, but help me out.
Yes, so the agreement sets that violations of it can be enforced by code enforcement with daily fines. It also allows the city to take legal action if it becomes necessary to enforce any of the agreements. So with the employment portion of the...
But I'm giving you the example of if it's not willful, they've made every good faith effort to try to employ these people. I mean, you know, we have an issue right now in the economy where folks aren't working. I don't know where they are, but, you know, some trades can't fill jobs. Hence why we have some vacancies in the organization. But if someone takes advantage of this, Mr. Sermons, I'm really trying to be fair and take care of this proactively, because I can already see that this is going to be a problem. Because I'm in the drop, if you didn't know that. I'm dropping out of here when my term is done. But I certainly want to make good policy while I'm here. If someone makes a good faith effort and they're not able to fulfill this, I don't want you to put code and compliance on them. That's not okay. So that's why I want to say, unless you can tell me that, let's just take it out.
Well, this ordinance initially had this section not included because of the challenges in providing oversight for things like employment. But as you know, lots of things transpired since the first draft of it, so we did put it back. We added language so that staff can have the ability to do a better job with providing oversight. But oversight for employment, to your point, yes, is a challenge. The required minority employment agreement is something that they will sign and get approved by this body upon the vote on the associated site plan for the project. And we expect the applicant to make those good faith efforts to stay in compliance with it. If they can demonstrate that they've made those attempts and were not able to meet it, then we can consider whether we need to take additional action or give them additional leeway and work with them on any challenges that may arise. But the purpose of the minority employment plan that they will be required to adopt is to make sure that there's clear guidelines on what's expected of them and what types of enforcement or consequences there may be if they don't meet it. But that plan is what would be presented to the council if that project moves forward.
Right, but once we ratify this as an ordinance, there is no leeway. The ordinance stands as it is. Unless we set forth some discretion in the city council, having the ability to do that, then nobody, you nor me nor the manager, has the ability to unilaterally decide which portions of the ordinance that we're going to enforce. So, I'm submitting to you again, and this is going to be my motion to amend, that we don't make both payment in lieu and participation in MEHOP. We change that into an or. Because, Mr. Simmons, you're literally setting folks up for failure right now if we're not clearing this up. And I'm telling you, I don't see how this can be fixed. And I'm really wanting feedback from the manager and the attorney. There's no way that this is going to work. And I'm coming to you in all fairness and the spirit of reasoning. Let's make it optional. That's all I have, and I'm not going to rehash it any further.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the attorney or city manager?
Madam Chair, to Director Sermon's point, and even the conversation that we did have with Attorney Franklin Lee that assisted us through the process, is that this particular section did propose some challenges in providing for a situation that tries to accomplish what this board has collectively set forth to ensure local and minority participation. One of the conversations that we did have at the staff level is we didn't want to have something that was arbitrary, and then we didn't want to have something that was not enforceable. I think Director Sermon's laid out that the bonuses that are provided allow for greater value to be captured by the developer. In return, the city does receive monies into the MEHOP, and then there is long-term benefit that is provided when those projects do hit the tax roll. So if it is the board's decision to make that change, we can certainly, make that change, but also there is some research, I think, or some information that would probably have to be gleaned as to what does that mean by making that change, unless Director Sermons can provide that on the fly. And I think that would that be deemed a substantive change that would result in us having to go through the process again? That's a question that I would have to defer to legal, that if we made that change, it could possibly have a situation where it's substantive in nature.
Okay. Are there any other? Are
Yes.
you finished, Mr. McCoy? Go ahead.
Well, I was looking for some feedback from the board, but Mr. Evans, thank you for that response. But, neither you nor Mr. Sermons has resolved the question that still remains outstanding. And for that reason, I'm going to offer an amendment if I can be recognized, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
In light of, making it more restrictive, I think we have to move this minority employment participation in this employment program as optional. So that's the motion that I'm going to offer, because clearly, if you pass an ordinance today or on second reading and it's mandatory, you're going to restrict every person that takes advantage of this bonus to the point where projects are going to be on standstill until they run around and then try to negotiate and hire subcontractors who so happen to be minority. And if it's not there, then what do? If a person doesn't want to come down because it's not lucrative, affordable, or they even have the capacity, we're going to let a halfway done project sit there? We got to do better. And this is the time where we tackle that while we're in the ordinance stage of creating this language. So that's my motion to make the MEHOP optional in terms of taking advantage of the minority employment portion optional.
Mr. McCoy, Madam Chair?
Yes, go
ahead.
If you could specifically state what section and the language that you'd like to change so that we'll know.
Sure. It's in the bonus density section in the chart related to IHC PUDs.
So that's section
I'm struggling, I don't have. It's in one of the tables.
I think it's
Section-
26.
If I may, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Section 26-6 deals with the language for minority employment. However, if there's a certain table you're referring to, they are numbered as well. The last one is the one that lists the mechanisms that the developer can use to meet the bonus requirements. And that would be Table 4, the last one.
And Mr. Sermons, is that page 17 of 19?
With the table?
And at the bottom, the IHC PUD section?
I think so. It starts at 15, but the specific section is it's on page 17.
Page 17 at the bottom, correct?
Yes.
And what would you like to change?
The one, I guess it's the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 column over. I'm sorry, no, it's not. Forgive me. Hold on, it's not. That's the half unit of.
The language that states a developer must meet both the housing and minority employment is primarily in 26-6, but there is a second section that has language related to that. So if it's the board's pleasure that we remove the "and" component, we can revise the document to remove all references to the requirement that they do both. So if necessary, we can make that change between first and second reading if it's the board's pleasure.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
I just still need clarification, Mr. Sermons. So section 26-6B1, is that where you're talking about deleting "and" at the end of that sentence? And changing that to "or"?
It would be 26-6F.
At least two of the components.
So you would amend that to say must satisfy one of the, at least one of the components?
Based on the comments from Councilman McCoy, we would remove F completely. And then in the calculation section, if I'm not mistaken, there's another reference, and we would remove that one as well.
What's the second one?
Give me a moment, and I'll see if I can locate him.
Madam Chair, so we're talking about F on what page?
Page
Page
11.
8 of 19?
8 of 19?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
26-6F.
Yes.
That's 11 out of, am I looking at something different?
F says,
11 of 29? That's not it?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just have a question. So.
Wait, I didn't get my question answered. Is it 11 of 29?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead, Dr. Botel.
So if we remove that, then a developer isn't required, I just want to understand, how do we require, how do we encourage, how do we mandate it, actually, I guess, developers to hire minority contractors and subs? If we take this out, what mechanism do we have?
My understanding, Dr. Botel, is, and Mr. Sermons, correct me if I'm wrong, is.
I don't think your
take it
mic
out.
is on. Or
Sorry, is that if you take it out, they still have to meet the requirements of 26-6B. They just don't have to meet the requirements of more than one section, just one of them. Is that correct, Mr. Sermons? Is that the intent?
If I understand the councilman correctly, he wants developers to be able to have the option of attaining bonuses by either satisfying the employment component or the affordable housing component.
See, that's my problem. Excuse me for pointing, but if it were just a matter of choosing one from 26-6B, 1, 2, or 3, that's different from eliminating the requirement for minority employment at all and just opting to use the affordable housing, I think. Am I right, Mr. Sermons?
Based on the existing ordinance that we are trying to improve, we believe it is a very bad way of giving out bonuses to allow permanent development bonuses that can be valued in the millions for providing temporary employment jobs that the councilman just pointed out are hard for the city to provide oversight of or verify that they're actually following through on. It is a challenge for us to verify these types of employment requirements. The way the ordinance is currently written, a developer can elect to satisfy the requirements by only meeting section 26-6, by only promising to provide minority employment and get permanent development bonuses. Staff believes that the only thing that is a fair trade for the amount of value they're getting with the development bonuses is to provide the housing or pay into the housing trust fund. The employment component, in our opinion, is something that is good to have because it's important to the city, but it in itself does not provide sufficient long-term value to the city for us to give permanent development bonuses.
So am I hearing that you are in agreement with making it, changing the word 2 to 1 in section F?
I'm sorry, section F.
Or would you prefer to see it, section F, taken out entirely? I guess that's my...
Can I offer in, Madam Chair?
Hold on one second.
And I'm sorry, could you please restate the question? I'm reading the text right now.
It sounded to me like what you were saying was that staff would prefer to have section F either modified to read at least one of the components or eliminated entirely. Is that what you said? And section F reads, projects that receive bonuses in the form of additional condo/hotel/rental units must satisfy at least 2 of the components of subsection B of this section, as well as housing contribution per section 26.7.
Okay, I understand the question. Staff would be okay with 1, staff would be okay with 1 or removing it.
Okay.
However, staff does not believe that any developer should be able to get these permanent bonuses only by fulfilling the employment section. So if the way we have written it, you must satisfy, if you're getting height bonuses, you must satisfy housing and employment. Staff does not recommend at all, or any scenario where they could get the bonuses only from employment. The way we have set it up here that you've just read, it requires those developments receiving height bonuses to satisfy 2 of the 3 components of minority employment. We have no opposition to bringing it down to 1. We also have no opposition to bringing it down to 0, but in no scenario do we believe we should give the bonuses only for employment, which is what the ordinance that's already on our books today allows to happen. And I hope I explained that okay. I know it's a lot of components to this ordinance.
I think I understand you, Dan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Hold on 1 minute. Are you finished, Dr. Botel? Are you finished?
Yes, I
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Lawson.
Thank you. Real quick, Mr. Sermons, you said you would not, staff would be inclined to say bring it down to 0? You said 1, but also bring it down to 0, meaning that a requirement, there's no requirement?
If it was the pleasure of the board that the only path forward to get the bonuses was through housing, the provision of affordable housing, staff would be okay with that. We just want to make sure that the document doesn't allow for the attainment of these bonuses through the minority employment section only.
Okay, and then Mr. Evans, you said that Franklin Lee reviewed this document and provided feedback for this information for the minority employment?
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
If I may defer to the city attorney to answer that question.
What did you say? What did you say?
If I can refer to the city attorney to address that question.
Okay. Go ahead.
Mr. Lawson, we forwarded the ordinance to Franklin Lee for review. He said that he was
I'm
not-
sorry, Attorney Nguyen,
I'm sorry. We forwarded the ordinance to Franklin Lee for review. He said that he was not particularly familiar with it. However, if it was based on, for instance, the requirements of a disparity study, he would say that we were not able to require it. However, this is a voluntary program. Developers don't have to participate in this. They opt to do so because they believe that it benefits them.
Okay, and I wanted to make sure, because I asked during the agenda review, just to get some more clarity, is this legally defensible for us to put in minority employment into this ordinance to allow for developers to come in, even though it's optional, and require them to have this without a disparity study in place?
Yes, sir. We are not the only community that has a MEHOP program.
Okay, so with that being said, when we have the minority employment, does this also address, or does this talk about local?
I didn't hear the last part.
Does this talk anything about local in regards to the employment? So we can do minority employment from anywhere in the world, and that would satisfy this height density and requirement?
I don't understand your question, sir.
The additional density is given to a applicant if they provide and address minority-owned businesses and minority employment for the development.
In the city, yes.
Where does it say in the city? Mr. Sermons?
I'm sorry, one more time for the question?
I mean, that's the only jurisdiction you have.
What,
Is
I'm
to-
sorry?
Is to adopt ordinances that affect the
What I'm
city.
saying is that they have to employ businesses to help with jobs or construction of these projects for additional density. Where does it say anything about the employment has to come from minority local businesses?
It doesn't.
No, it does not.
Attorney Nguyen?
Right, it does not.
Okay, so in regards to this having the only jurisdiction, as you stated, this is not properly outlined, that if we're going to require that it's minority participation, that it has to be also local, which is what we've also instructed from day one, that we want to make sure local businesses are being assisted, that we're making sure minority businesses are being assisted. But minority businesses from a different county, city, or country is not going to benefit the residents of Riviera Beach. So if we're going to give additional densities, we need to make sure that that's incorporated, that it's local and minority. And then if we put that into this actual document, I would want Franklin Lee to review this again to make sure that that would be legally defensible.
Again, as long as it's voluntary, it will be legally defensible, because again, they do not have to participate in this program.
Well, then, just for clarity's sake, I want to make sure that we understand that local would be something of preference. And then if we do add local into this for preference, this is also going to piggyback on my colleague's concern and point of being able to fulfill the obligations of local and minority businesses to address some of the needs of some of the developers coming in.
Yeah, I believe you can encourage local and minority businesses, but you cannot mandate it.
But the language is mandating it.
And you understand that it is to encourage. If you look at the purpose of the plan in section 26-2, it's to decrease unemployment by encouraging the hiring of minorities. You can insert local businesses and minority, but it's still to encourage.
But then this language is saying that you cannot receive this bonus unless you satisfy at least two of the components. So that's not encouragement, that's a requirement to get the additional bonuses.
If you want to participate in the program, you don't have to participate in the program. A developer could come in and say, I'm going to build this development, and I don't care about your minority employment program. I don't want to do that. I'm just going to build it without that. And they can do that. There's no requirement. It's not like we're saying every development that comes through the city has to utilize this program. That would be unlawful and indefensible.
Madam Chair?
Hold on 1 minute. Are you finished, Mr. Lawson, or you?
No, I have a few more items, Madam Chair. Mr. Sermons, did you have to piggyback on that?
Yes, I just wanted to highlight that in the additional language, we are clarifying that for them to participate in the minority employment program, they have to present to this body a minority participation plan. And that plan is not approved unless it meets the interests of this body. There are some major components, and especially as it relates to 1, 2, and 3 under B 426-6. But this is not all of the text that would be related to their meeting of this component. They would have to provide a plan along with their site plan that's presented to this board as to how they will meet it, and it would be up to this body. So you have another bite at the apple, so to speak, to ensure that what they're proposing in terms of minority employment meets the interests or the standards of this body. So this ordinance would enable them to get bonuses through it, but they would have a standalone agreement related to employment that they would have to present, and that can be scrutinized and additional detail or flexibility be added to it. So this ordinance does provide for that additional step to work out the details at the time a project is proposed.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Section 26-6, Section A, the second sentence reads, "This will enable the workforce of the city, which is predominantly minority, to directly benefit from the economic boom South Florida is experiencing." So I think that provides the language that we are talking about that looks to ensure that the local workforce is provided for the opportunity to benefit from said development opportunities or employment opportunities. And then obviously there's probably some skills and some trades that persons may have to look outside the greater Riviera Beach area. And I think that goes to Councilperson McCoy's point that in order to source some of the things and the skill set necessary to facilitate some of these construction activities, invariably some of the work or some of the trades may come from outside of the community. But I did want to point out that particular language that's incorporated in Section 26-6.
Follow up, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
So reading that section, Mr. Evans, stating that this will enable the workforce of the city, predominantly minority, to benefit, but it doesn't clearly state that we're looking for the local minority businesses. It's just saying minority businesses. So it will give us an opportunity to benefit, but as long as they bring in developments that's minority owned, then, or employment that's minority owned, that will satisfy this requirement, and then not truly benefit the actual city unless we clearly state local.
Madam Chair, if I may?
Go ahead.
If it's the pleasure to provide that additional language in there, that's not a problem. We can put that in there and make it more explicit. So there's no room for interpretation as to what the objective is with regards to this section.
Madam Chair, I did want to move on to a different item of hotel conversions, but if any colleagues want to chime in on this section before I moved on to the next one.
Well, Ms. McCoy, did you have something related to this part still?
Well, I got left way back there.
Okay,
I'm not so much concerned with that because I think there is some understanding that this is going to create issues. But to Mr. Lawson's point, Mr. Lawson, I would really ask you to look at items 1, 2, and 3 and tell me if you know 8 minority professionals within the city of Riviera Beach that has some sort of construction trade, skilled or unskilled labor that you can basically assign to a project. And in the event that they're not with the capacity, how do you now tell this project that's on hold, you have to wait until, ABC company who does general contracting and can provide, let's just say, fire suppression systems, until they're ready. Like what happens in that case? I think certainly this defines local, not by saying Riviera Beach, but it says the South Florida community. And I think if you make it Riviera Beach, I think you're creating a pool where this is going to be almost impossible to even achieve.
Well, following up, I was asking for the language, and I would love to give preference to Riviera Beach, which is a requirement, but just to add the local term into this to make sure that we are legally defensible for Palm Beach County, South Florida, into this language of item 26-6. Because right now, this is just saying minority. This has nothing about local in it. So if that language is not incorporated into here, a contracted developer can ask and request the density and fulfill it with minority firms from anywhere in the world. So that's why I wanted the local here, and I agree, I would love to fulfill it with Riviera Beach residents, then Palm Beach County, but as long as we're addressing local, that means it has to be clearly defined as local in this section. And just to piggyback, I'm going to be addressing and talking about the disparity study, because we would be able to move forward with a lot of these items if we did complete and have this disparity study in place. But we're having to find creative ways of doing this to make sure policy is set. So making sure that this language is outlined somewhere in this section to say that local and minority business, and then clearly define what local looks like. Because local can be Riviera Beach, it can be defined as Palm Beach County, it can be defined as Florida. But I want to make sure it's defined clearly in this section with the minority participation.
All right.
Madam Chair, if I can clarify on that,
ahead.
so staff would insert language in here stating that the preference shall be given to local or Riviera Beach employees and companies to fulfill these three components in this section?
So local would be preference for Riviera Beach, then expand out to Palm Beach County. Because to my colleague's point, we may not be able to find that number of actual qualified businesses within our 8 square miles. But if we look within Palm Beach County, we can still give that same opportunity. But I want to make sure that we're addressing that local minority participation within our city first, and possibly figuring out the language. You guys are a lot smarter than me. That needs to go in there that states that we're going to give preference and start with our residents from the community.
Madam Chair, I'll take that. I think I'm just a tad bit smarter than you, Councilman Lawson. But here's one that I want to suggest to see if the members would indulge. What about if we just add language that references Palm Beach County's OBEO, Office of Equal Business Opportunity, since they already have a program, and most of all of these contractors are registered through that office, and I imagine if you are registered and current with that office, that would satisfy both two things. Number one, that you're minority, and also that you have a footprint here in Palm Beach County. And I think that doesn't limit the pool to just Riviera Beach, it kind of expands it. So just a little bit, Councilman Lawson. And you're pretty smart, but, so, I mean, that's a discussion item for the board.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
well, one of the comments is that I would like to see the density bonuses for actually providing more affordable housing units on a project, period. No other options. Also, when you look at the local and minority, then you're going to have to get into how you're going to define local and minority. So all of those issues have to come up in terms of how do you define it? So we put that in there, we're going to have some definition of it.
Thank you for clarity.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair,
Madam Chair.
I think Councilman McCoy just gave the best idea.
In the mic.
I think Councilman McCoy just gave us the best solution to work with the county, because everything is filed, whether you're a minority business, where you're licensed, and if we incorporate that, I think that answers all of our questions.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to suggest the same. As long as we are sure that the county has a complete list, and I would imagine they do, then we can use the county's list. And I would be okay with changing, I would not be okay with taking it out and removing Section F, but I would be okay with modifying it to be only one of the requirements. And I'm also okay with making it local, as long as local is not defined exclusively as Riviera Beach, but rather encompasses the county's list.
Speaking to the mic, please.
Oh, but rather accompanies the county's list.
All right, so someone making a motion?
So I'll make a motion that we, before the next reading, modify the language in Section 26-6, Minority Employment Component, such that Section F reads, projects that receive bonuses in the form of additional condo/hotel/rental units must satisfy at least one of the components of subsection B of this section, as well as the housing component per Section 26-7, and also that we include I suppose in section 26-6A, let me see.
Point of order. So first, I started this off by offering up an amendment. In fact, my amendment was or. Now, you're going to discard my amendment. I certainly appreciate you having a different perspective, but I think I preserved my rights by offering up an amendment, 30 minutes ago.
Could I finish the motion, and then you can tell me that you don't want to listen to it or vote on it?
Right, but don't materially modify the motion that I've already offered as an amendment. I think we should probably let mine go forward. If that's gonna pass, then let's do that. If not, then, you're welcome to do whatever you want. But I think that's why I started off this conversation and spent extensive amount of time talking to Mr. Sermons about whether or not we should use and or.
All right, so you are going to restate your motion, Mr. McCoy?
Yes, I wanted to
We will
remove.
hold off on Dr. Votel.
Right, and I don't mind having the input from
go
the other
ahead.
members, Council Chair, but the issue is what she's saying is just basically redefining everything that I brought up originally. She wants to continue.
Go ahead and restate your motion.
Okay, I want to remove, and I think, Mr. Sermons, you said this is referenced in 2 sections?
Which sections?
Yes, I would need a moment to find all of the locations where both are referenced, or the and is referenced. At the moment, I can't cite every one of them, but staff would be sure to search out and change all of them if the motion is approved to make it or.
Right, so, I'll offer that motion to amend Chapter 26 of the Minority Employment Affordable Housing Program to allow for the minority employment component to be optional instead of required, that there's a contribution and participation in the employment component, coupled with defining minority and local through whatever registry that's offered through Palm Beach County's
Madam
OBO.
Chair, may I ask a question for clarification?
Yeah, that was you asking for?
Yes, I wanted to
Yeah.
make sure I understood the other councilman. So would you be saying that, again, what's in question is developments that would be acquiring height bonuses? Are you saying that they would have to comply with the housing section and that the employment section would be optional to them?
I'm speaking of IHC PUD, where you explain in your presentation, this is why it's important for us to address this when it comes up. You said for the IHC PUD, you have the ability to contribute, and you are required to also participate in the minority employment. That's the sole issue that I'm addressing, just for that use.
Yes, and I will clarify what I said earlier. The and applies to any zoning districts. In addition to IHC PUD, any zoning district that gets bonuses of height would have to satisfy both. So that's inclusive of IHC PUD, but it's not the only one. So the amendment you're proposing would state that IHC PUD and those other districts would have to meet the the affordable housing section, and that employment is an option to them?
Correct.
Okay.
Or, in the alternative, the contribution and the option of choosing the employment portion.
Okay. Understood.
So,
All right, so
Madam
do
Chair?
we have a second?
Madam Chair, discussion?
Huh? We need a second.
Second for
All right.
discussion.
Go ahead.
So, all right, I guess I'm a little confused in regards to the or, the and. So, Councilman, for, I guess, clarity, what you're asking is that for the additional density, we want to offer an or for housing in lieu of payment, contribution, or the workforce housing, or the minority employment. So all they have to do is either contribute financially to the housing trust or address the workforce units or provide minority employment, where it says currently and, minority employment and either contribution or housing units.
Right.
I guess my concern with that would be that we really want to be intentional. And this is just for the additional density. for the MEHOP portion of it, or for across the entire board?
The entire project is my understanding.
So this is the entire project or the additional density?
Good question.
So if a program, if a project receives any bonuses from MEHOP,
Any bonuses at all?
yes.
Which
they-
is what density, what stories does that start for the MEHOP?
So, for example, in IHC PUD, floors 21 through 25 would only be afforded through the MEHOP program.
So 21 through 25, so floors 1 through 20 would not be obligated to any of these restrictions or requirements?
If a developer only wants to develop a 20-story project, then none of this applies.
None of this applies.
If they
So there's no benefit outside of ad valorem tax increase, so there's no contribution to workforce housing, no employment, minority employment, so there's nothing for increased density up to this 20-story for the IHC currently?
That's correct.
It's not good. That's not good at all. Because now we are not really and truly impacting or benefiting, because developers can just do 20 stories all up and down the IHC development corridor, and local minority businesses won't benefit. We won't get any funding for our housing or workforce affordable housing, and we won't get any workforce done within our community over 20 stories if they don't want to take advantage of those additional 5 stories. That is very concerning for clarity's sake, and I'm not sure if my colleagues understand that, but that is an issue for me with that clarity now.
So follow up.
Are you finished, Mr. Lawson?
I got a lot more, Madam Chair, but go ahead.
Clarify, Mr. Lawson, you're suggesting that we should now require a contribution for something that's already permitted by right?
Have we already set that to permitted by right?
I mean, this
Well,
is, I mean, you know,
This would be setting it to permitted by right, but we haven't done it yet.
correct, but as it stands currently, so you're asking us to increase more contributions to this?
I'm asking for
Housing
the
trust.
appetite of well, I'm definitely going to address the housing contribution, because after conversations at the FRA conference with other officials in regards to their policy, that's next on my list of items. In lieu of contribution, I'm concerned with the amount, because we're actually on the low end of what we're requesting for developers to come to the table. And in addition to that,
Before you go that far,
that's a
though,
whole nother topic.
But hold
We'll
on,
get to it.
both of
Before
you
you go
can't
that
talk
far,
at the
I
same
think-
time, Mr. McCoy and Lawson. One
Right,
at
but
a
he's
time.
already moving on to another item, Madam Chair, and I think we're dealing with the very issue of providing clarification. Are we talking about the optional portion or?
So in regards to that, for the optional, I would not be supportive of the or. It would have to be the and, now that I have clarity. But then we're going to continue on with the topics and the additional conversation that we're going to have.
Okay.
All right, any other discussion for the motion that's on the floor by Mr. McCoy? And can you restate it, Ms. Smith?
So he's making an amendment to 26-6F. You're changing the wording in that to be or?
That's correct.
Okay, and then also, I have noted here that we're looking to define local minority participation. You're going to use the county's program?
That's correct. Local and minority.
Local and minority? Can you state the name of the program you referenced?
I think it's called OBEO. Is it OBEO?
Equal business opportunity.
Office of Equal Business Opportunity.
Madam Chair,
Hold on 1 minute.
That's it, Madam Chair.
Okay,
could that be two motions?
say it again.
Could that be, sorry, could that be two motions? Because there's actually two different issues. Well, not two different issues, but it's two
I don't see why
items.
not.
I mean, if he wants to split it up.
I don't see why not. If she's wanting to offer up something, sure, why not?
Well, we can just use those same two motions. I mean, those same two items and just make them two separate motions.
That's fine.
Okay.
All right,
can we
for the
handle
person that did the second, is that okay with you? Your second still stand?
Yes,
Mr. Lawson,
still stands. Yes, Madam Chair.
for both?
And in the spirit of trying to get this right, don't just vote it down. If you have some concerns, let's talk about what your dissension is to why we need to bifurcate it, so we can try to figure out if this can work.
Well, I had an issue with the and/or. I think it should be and.
Okay.
Agreed.
Yeah, me too.
But the other one I can agree with, but I don't see where it would benefit the city any if we have an or clause in there. It has to be that plus something else.
Right, but here it is, members, and you guys make a great point, but my question that I'm gonna raise with those that say it should be in is the same question that I raised with Mr. Sermons and Mr. Evans. And please, I'm looking for feedback, because we don't wanna set this out there and then someone takes advantage, submits an application, enter into an agreement, but for some reason, the employment market doesn't lend to being able to fulfill these specific requirements. What happens with that application? What happens to the construction that's in progress? And that's why I'm asking, that's exactly why I want it to not be mandatory. Please give me an alternative.
Madam Chair? Madam Chair?
Okay, go ahead.
Wanted to address the alternatives. I think we clearly stated with the local and assisting with the organizations of opportunity, equal opportunity business, OEBEO, to focus on making sure local businesses benefit. Because I know that originally you stated that it'd be difficult to possibly have vendors or businesses within this 8 square miles. But if we truly identify what local looks like, and we give those opportunities to the applicants to use local businesses in South Florida, that can be definitely fulfilled and addressed. And if they're looking at the additional density of 21 through 25 stories, I want to make sure that we're maximizing on every opportunity possible to make sure that minority and local businesses are benefiting from that additional density, because by right, based on how this policy is written, they're already allowed to go up to 20 stories. So if we're going to go ahead and give them that additional density, which frankly has stated that it's optional for them to participate in, so it's legally defensible, then we need to make sure that we're making it to a point where we completely capitalize and benefit from that. That would be the first concern. The second would be making sure that we define local. And then the third would be, what are going to be the penalties, to Councilman McCoy's point? What are going to be the penalties? What are going to be the assessed penalties? What is going to be a fee? Is it going to increase the payment in lieu of? Or is there going to be a financial penalty? What is going to be assessed to these individuals at what time frame? When are we going to start that? If they employ or hire or contract a company or a firm and they cannot fulfill the job, they fall short, they're terminated from the contract, do penalties start at that time? So I want to make sure it's clearly defined, because we have applicants that would love to submit applications, and I'm sure will be jumping at the opportunity to build a 26-story tower somewhere in our community, but we want to make sure it's clearly defined as to what's the expectation when they come to the table. Because now, if they submit this, they hire, they contract, they bring in a contractor, and they want to terminate his contract. How do we hold them accountable? What happens at that point? If the contractor doesn't fulfill the job, do they then have to go refill it with a local contractor? What happens at that point? When do penalties fees? At the discretion of staff, at the discretion of who is going to be penalized? So I want to just be clearly defined if we're going to require that and is done for both the business and the local, the vendors that we're going to participate with. So that would be kind of just some feedback to yours, Councilman McCoy.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
And also too, the purpose is housing, and so we should not be in a position to give a windfall for developers and not get our value for affordable housing. We need to make sure that we get our value for affordable housing, because that is you have this issue of affordable housing anyway. So why would you have a situation where there's a windfall for a developer, but there is no affordable housing even involved? So that's the reason why I want to have it as and instead of or. And, it's just a simple solution. It's to make sure that we get our value for affordable housing.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I agree that it should be and, because if it's not and, what happens to our minority employment component here? I mean, and I understand that it's sometimes difficult to find minority businesses to work with, but we're not limiting this to the city of Riviera Beach. We're using the county's list, and it should be, and frankly, shame on us if we haven't put forth the effort to help this community develop more minority-owned businesses that can engage in construction activities. We should be working with the college, we should be working with technical schools, and helping people learn how to do trades. So I'm opposed to limiting it just to affordable housing, and I think that it should be both affordable housing and minority employment.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
the real purpose of education is to allow one to think intensively and critically. This is a real change from October 5th, when I said in the meeting, and everything that I was saying about preserving this minority component was disregarded. And here we are now in February, and I got the same members that voted against it now trying to parade this around as if this is some sort of token to celebrate, that they're fighting for this. And that's the very purpose. What I'm trying to do is not set someone up for failure here. And to the point, to the pro tem, she keeps saying that affordable housing is not in here. If you look at the table, mostly every one of these zoning districts provides for an affordable housing component that you either can, in lieu of, you can actually decide to build a half of affordable housing unit equivalent in the IHC PUD district, in the RPUD district, 1-for-1. For every unit you get in bonus, you have to build an affordable unit somewhere else off-site. So it's already called out in the code. You know, and the truth is, I'm still waiting, and, you know, I think we've kind of went here several times, but make this kind of open, and I would say give staff some definitions, but I think we're going to create a situation, if we're going to require those provisions, which I certainly believe we did expand the net by going to the county and using their definition, but that we're going to have folks that's going to be able to comply. And I don't want someone to be met with code compliance and strict violations if for some way out of their control, they're not able to meet those and requirements of hiring 8 professionals in this field. It's like, what happens? So maybe the workforce board that you have can probably help with that.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Sermons, for the additional density, if the board moves forward with the and versus the or, the employment that we're expecting is based on just the 5 additional stories of the construction, or is it based on the entire project?
The entire project would have to meet the employment requirements.
Okay. I have some questions about the housing component as well, but the entire project would have to meet the employment requirements for all stories, not just restrictive to the additional 6 stories.
Correct. Throughout the duration of development of the site, the employment components of this section would have to be met. And again, we've modified this such that these projects with the additional height would only have to meet 2 of the components here. There was discussion of moving that down to 1 to make sure that this is more attainable in terms of meeting those requirements. But yes, it would have to be met throughout the duration of construction.
Okay. And I guess we'll dispose of, or we'll discuss the, or vote on the motion if there's no more dialogue, and then move on to the other items that we have.
All right. So the motion, the one motion that's on the floor, which is just read the first one so that if we don't have any other questions or comments, we go ahead and vote on that.
So the first motion would be to change and to or in section 26-6F as in Frank.
All right.
Well, if you plug in or there, that doesn't necessarily fix the problem per se. I was speaking in concept that it should be an option, not both. So, you know, I don't know how you figure that out, Mr. Sermons. You understand what I'm saying? She's saying plug in or where and is, and I don't know that that actually, it's not even an and.
It's as well as, Madam
It says
Chair.
as well as, right. So I'm saying to make that portion optional, not really changing, not substituting and for or. That's not what I'm asking that we do, because there's no and in there. What I'm asking is that we make it optional.
So restate it so that she's able to write it, because she did read it to you and asked you if that was it, and you said yes. So restate it to her so that she knows exactly what you're trying to communicate.
Okay, amend 26-6, subsection 5, projects that receive bonuses in the form of additional condo hotel rental units must satisfy at least, let's go, one of the components of the subsection B of this section, or housing contribution per section 26-7.
All right, so Mr. Lawson, your second still stands for that?
No, Madam Chair.
You said yes?
No.
No. All right. Do we have a second for this item? Do we have a second? All right, the motion dies for lack of a second.
Thank
All right, the second one, Mr.
Madam Chair, do you want to call a vote on it as is?
No.
No.
No, we said we were going to take the two motions that he had.
Okay.
You want to restate the second one,
The local.
Mr. McCoy?
Sure. And this is not exactly something that I'm substituting, so I'm asking that Mr. Sermons and his team wordsmith this for second reading, that we define local and minority by and through using Palm Beach County's Office of Equal Business Opportunity.
All right. Mr. Lawson, your second still stands?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
There is a definition already in here for minority, but we can add one for local to clarify what we mean and reference the county's program to
Please.
make sure.
In fact, I would rather use theirs because ours is very, very confusing.
What line item? What line item is the definition, Mr. Sermons?
So
It's on page 2.
Page 4 of 29, there is a definition of minority employers and minority group.
I'm sorry, page
4 of 29 in the ordinance.
Page 4 of 29, okay.
And that seems to be tied to some sort of unemployment rate. I don't understand how, if a person is minority or not, what that has to do with unemployment. That's why I wanted us just to stick with Palm Beach County's definition, because they have a criteria in which they use to certify businesses as either small or minority.
Okay, so it would be to swap our definition for theirs
Correct.
as it relates to minority employers?
Yeah, I mean, 2005, how do you now determine if a person is a minority based off of whether they're employed or not? That doesn't make a whole lot of logical sense to me, but,
Understood.
I mean,
All right, so your second stands, Mr. Lawson?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
Councilperson Lawson?
Yes.
Councilperson Botel?
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy?
yes.
Chair Pro Tem Lanier?
Yes.
Chairperson Miller Anderson?
Yes.
That vote passes, Madam Chair.
All right, so, Ms. Nguyen?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I did want to continue, though, with just some items that I had.
Okay,
The
go ahead.
housing contribution component.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, we didn't really finish this section because we didn't vote on whether it's 1 or 2 in section.
It just died. I mean, that would be another motion because
Well, I was starting to make that motion earlier, if you recall.
this is getting really messy here. Can he, what section are you going to, Mr. Lawson?
The next one, 26-7, the housing contribution component, the and.
Okay, so hold on a minute. She's still on 26-6.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Botel?
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion that we change 26-6 minority employment component, section F, section F to read, projects that receive bonuses in the form of additional condo hotel rental units must satisfy at least one, as opposed to 2, of the components of subsection B of this section, as well as housing component per section 26-7.
All right, do we have a second?
Second
All right,
question.
question, go ahead.
Dr. Botel, how do you propose that we fulfill this if we don't have, if a developer is unable to fulfill this? What's the alternative?
I don't think that I think that developers will be able to fulfill it because they can choose between with 3 different options, one of which is fairly minimal.
All right, any other questions?
Okay, so your answer was what? You think they can?
Yes, that's what she said, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
So she's changing the least 2 to at least 1?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Madam Clerk?
Councilperson Lawson,
No.
Councilperson Botel,
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Lanier,
No.
Chairperson Miller Anderson.
Yes.
That vote passes with Councilperson Lawson and Lanier dissenting.
All right. Mr. Lawson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Sermons, the second item, housing contribution components, construction of affordable obtainable workforce units or in lieu of cash contributions to housing trust. And then the table outlines the actual contribution for the housing trust. A few questions we talked about in the agenda review. Where and who is going to manage the housing trust funds? Where are they going to be housed and who's going to manage it?
Yes, the funds will be housed in the city's housing trust fund. We have proposed additional language in D of this section about the management of it. We list what are eligible expenditures from the account as well as oversight.
We're in D of the same section?
Yes, 26-7.
And what page is that?
Page 13 says Affordable Housing Development Agreement. I don't see the trust fund in there. Maybe it's a different section you're notating?
On page 17 of 29.
17, okay, I'm there.
And D of that page.
17D, in lieu contribution, okay, so page 17.
And 3 and 4 discuss the housing trust fund. 4 is oversight of the housing trust fund.
Okay. So a team of staff included but not limited to representative of the city administration, finance department, development services, Riviera Beach, CRA, financial report on housing, trust shall be provided. So they will be the manager and oversight of this housing trust fund.
In terms of approving expenditures and oversight, yes.
Not one person there is an expert within the housing field. So there's been no development from anybody here in regards to housing. And my concern is that the housing trust fund managed by this outline is not going to get affordable housing, workforce housing, or attainable housing completed. The conference and meeting that I had with staff from other municipalities told me their biggest hurdle and issue was taking a fee from developers to get housing completed, but then them not actually being able to obtain it because they're not built to complete and develop housing. We're not in a position where we're trying to build homes and build property and manage this trust fund. So I'm not sure if this is going to be the best oversight for the trust fund and collecting all of these dollars, which will just continue to sit there, kind of like the $35 million we just got sitting in a general fund right now. I'm concerned with where these dollars are going and actually getting the housing addressed. So I think, colleagues, we have to really take a look at if we're going to get these dollars contributed, number one, increasing it, because I wanted you to also identify, if you could bring that, you don't have a presentation or anything, bring the chart up, or take us to that page of how much we're charging for the fee, and then seeing what is a comparable number to other municipalities in regards to that fee in lieu of, increasing that dollar amount, number one, and then number two, making it a higher dollar amount so that we can require housing and affordable and workforce and obtainable housing to actually be developed by the professionals that are building these units. Go ahead.
Madam Chair.
Were you done, Mr. Lowe?
A few more topics, but go ahead to my colleagues.
Let me regather where I was going to respond to you. Mr. Lawson.
Sir.
The committee who's overseeing this has no ability to set aside or appropriate or even use one dime out of this fund. It's just there for compliance and oversight, but certainly any projects that they come up with, no matter who we have on the board, we can put 5 citizens on the board. The fact is, everything's still gonna have to come back to, has to be done and administered through the process laid out in the ordinance. There isn't any authority granted with this board.
But to that same point, this board and these dollars, the concern that's come back before other municipalities is that collecting these funds, whether the oversight is by this board, whether the administrative staff, whoever is overseeing these dollars is actually not addressing the concern of getting affordable workforce housing. So I actually would be inclined to raising these cash in lieu payments to a higher amount, because I just don't trust that the money coming to the city is actually going to get the housing addressed in our community. So if we raise that dollar amount, I still want to address how this oversight is done. I still want to address where these dollars are going and how we can actually disseminate the funds. Because once we collect this money from these developers that are coming in, they're going to pay us a check and move on with their money. We still won't be able to address the affordable housing component that's needed.
Well, can we take those?
Go ahead.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just to discuss the oversight component that's in there, and the representative from the CRA clearly would be Ms. Jenkins, who has extensive experience with regards to workforce housing and housing developments and the like, and we, did help facilitate the Berkeley Landing development. With regards to this particular committee, it would be something that when there is funds received as a part of the report and part of the budget appropriation, that there could be language that is provided for that a work plan would have to be set forth. So similar to that of a capital improvements plan or a plan that is discussed as part of your budget process, that is something that can easily be provided for to say, what is the balance of the account? What are some work plan activities? And then ultimately the board, to Councilperson McCoy's point, is absolutely correct, is that would have to come back to the board for the purposes of discussion, whether it's a development that we help seed or that we help develop ourselves. That is all a legislative item that would have to come back for some type of action from the board. So you still would have the say as to what those funds are utilized if they are consistent with what's provided for in the ordinance.
Follow up, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
And thank you, Mr. Evans. I guess my concern is more so about how and when and who's going to get these properties developed, because with all due respect to Ms. Anita Jenkins and our CRA staff, my CDC has probably been to, in 4 years of sitting on this board, to maybe 1 or 2 ribbon cuttings of 2 single-family houses in a community addressing affordable workforce housing and first-time home buyers. And that's not sufficient when we have a shortage of 150,000 doors of Palm Beach County. So I want to make sure that the money that's coming in is disseminated properly. And I do not trust this Housing Trust Fund oversight team to make sure that doors are being addressed in this community. So my concern, and even just the oversight, coming before the board, correcting a plan, it's just not getting done. And I think that we really need to identify, because the payment in lieu, I've had many conversations with other administration, and that is something, we're not built to actually, we're built to provide policy oversight to a community. There's developers and organizations that are proficient in housing, in homes, in affordable housing, in workforce housing, Berkeley Landing, for example. And I think we need to really focus on either increasing the payment and making it so astronomical that it's on the higher end versus being on the lower end, comparing to other policies that are written, in addition to requesting and asking and making sure this policy sets that the developers are addressing the component of the workforce obtainable and the affordable housing issue. And that was the feedback that I got with going to these conferences from individuals that wrote this policy, because they got these dollars from these developers, but then they did not get the housing that they were needing, and they were just sitting on additional capital inside a housing trust fund.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Councilman Lawson, you bring up a good point, but, we have to remember, there's only so much land that's in the city. And one of the questions I asked last week, if we got a developer, the builder to come in here and they decide to take advantage of this bonus and they do 50 units, and they get a bonus for 50 units, now they're obligated to do 25 affordable units. It's very unlikely and almost impractical that they're going to build those 25 affordable units right next to where they got those bonus units. But where we're landlocked in the city, where could you possibly go and build 25 units in the city? So I'm very much open to increasing the payment in lieu amount, because sometimes it's almost impractical, and it might be that we need those dollars for those programs like Ms. Jenkins are doing over there to set aside for down payment assistance or help with, acquisition of existing homes. But, do we have, we got 25 acres to, it's just almost impossible. Now, the other thing is, you touched on it, let's have a conversation about the fees, but I want it to be based off of some measurable and not just arbitrary. We say it's 105,000, let's go for 300,000. Let's have some sort of basis on how we arrive at it, and I support that whatever information we use is, is something that's comparable.
I believe, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
I believe we spoke in our agenda review, Mr. Sermons. What is the maximum that we can actually charge for this fee per unit, price per unit?
The maximum we can charge?
There is no, whatever.
I don't believe we're restricted in what number we put on.
In our conversation, you said that we were kind of on the lower end of the price per unit.
Based on our research of other municipalities in the
Do
county,
you have
yes.
some comparisons to show us? Or
Yes.
something that we can look at, because we're making a decision based upon a price per, and you just gave us a dollar amount, but we don't really have a table or a chart to determine where we are on the middle, low end, high end. But it was a question I asked, and I was hoping that you would have it ready for us.
So if I'm not mistaken, in your backup, there's the presentation that was previously given on this ordinance, and there was a table where we sampled the in lieu of contributions of other municipalities in the area.
Can you take me there?
Yes, it would be on page 5 of the PowerPoint document.
5, well, not on this presentation, a separate, page 5 of the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, can we bring the PowerPoint up? Is that possible? Walter or anybody?
Madam Chair, on my copy, it's much past page 5. It's sampling of in lieu of contributions, and it's on page.
Where is it? I'm sorry, I'm trying to find it.
Page 11 of 15.
11 and 15.
I have it on page 11 of 15. Madam Chair. Mr. Sermons, are you referring to the presentation for the Planning and Zoning meeting?
Yeah, we just said 11 of 15.
You have it on 11.
Should be
Yeah.
Yeah.
MIHOP presentation from City Council workshop.
Oh, okay.
Not the sampling of in lieu of contributions?
That is the correct slide.
Yeah, it's
Sampling of in lieu of.
Presentation from the planning and zoning, or for the planning and zoning.
Presentation for PZB meeting final?
Yes, 11 of
PDF?
15,
Page 11?
yes.
Thank you. So we would be on the low end of the contributions.
Yes, that's correct.
Well,
Okay, so number one, I'd probably want to increase that, colleagues, or ask that we go at a higher dollar amount, for the sake of, we have some of the last undeveloped land off of the intercoastal, or underdeveloped land on the intercoastal, and it's some of the most valuable. I know that we don't want to put too many hoops, hurdles, or loops into this, but we are setting policy that we need to make sure that we're benefiting at a pace that we know people are clamoring at the bit to develop this land. We understand that. We've spoken to so many people that want to have this opportunity. So I say that we increase this. I would actually present going in at a fee closer to where Delray Beach is at the $160,000.
And per rental unit? What would you have for that amount? Nothing there?
question.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I wholly support increasing it. I think that, especially now with housing costs that are so high and steadily increasing, that we need to really get an analysis of how these various cities are doing this. I don't really want to make a decision on the fly, but I really do want to increase it. But I think we need to have more information in terms of how we do that. Not so much how, but how much, to make sure that we can be in line or in step with other municipalities, but also to make sure that that we are looking at increases. I don't think that, Mrs. Sermons, when was the last time it was increased?
Never.
I believe 2005, if I'm not mistaken, is when these rates were set, somewhere around that era.
Yeah, so we are certainly due for that. So, but I think that, I want to, preface, I want to increase it, but we want to make sure that we do it in a way that is in line, not so much in line with other municipalities, but in line with what the goals of the city is. So, I agree with the increase, but I just want to make sure that we are looking at the actual cost of these units.
So can he come back for, by the second reading, or provide us with some sort of recommendations of the amounts?
Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
with some of the discussion that the board had concerning this particular item, and to make sure that we incorporate all the changes and do the research that the board has requested of staff, it probably would be advantageous for us to consider bringing it back as a discussion item with all the changes and a actual bona fide presentation that speaks to some of these items. And if the board is in favor of that version, then we set the second reading to be able to make sure that we incorporate everything. Because what I don't want to have happen is we bring it to you at second reading and there's still some items that are not completely cooked, and then there's a situation where you prolong this longer. And so I think that extra step in the process will provide for a better end product and a quicker resolution to the issue, because there's a lot of great points that were brought up in the discussion, and we want to make sure that we address those and have the data to back it up. So if it's the board's pleasure, that would be staff's recommendation.
Okay.
I would be in agreement with that, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
You said yes?
Yes.
Yeah, too, because most in lieu contributions are woefully low for the cost of units now. So certainly we should do that.
All right.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
And then I also did have one other item to talk about, the conversion, hotel conversion to residential and the impact fees. So when we're ready to move on to that item as well.
All right, go ahead.
Mr. Sermons, can we go to the conversion portion of the document? Hotel conversion to permanent housing, condo?
Yes.
What number is that again?
So it is in Table 4, and then there is some language addressing how that works as well, if you give me just a moment.
Page 16.
I've lost.
Page 16.
Okay. So during our meeting, we talked about impact fees. How do we actually go about collecting the impact fees? And will there be an increase of money owed to the city and the county for impact fees if we convert from a hotel to a condo?
Yes, that conversion would require the development to, one, update their site plan for the development, but two, pay the requisite impact fees associated with converting a hotel resort unit to a condominium. And there is a difference in the fees that they would pay for that. So, and it is not unusual for the city or in developments anywhere to have a change of use. And in those situations, they are generally given a credit, which we do here in Riviera Beach. We give you a credit for any impact fees that have already been paid, and assess any difference between the previous rate and the new use. That would be paid upon the new permit. So it would require that transaction to take place in addition to the conversion MEHOP contribution.
So how are those triggered, and how do we guarantee and account for those fees and those dollars that are coming in?
So the primary benefit for these conversions are so that the owners can homestead the properties. And the trigger for the tax appraiser to know that there's been a change of use is when our permitting department sends all of their files over to the tax appraiser's office so they can see what additions and changes or modifications to properties have taken place. And this would include a change of use from a resort hotel unit to a condominium. So being that that's the main trigger to get this benefit, they would have to get the requisite permits to convert these units. It's called a change of use permit. And before any permits are issued, you have to pay any required impact fees associated with the proposed development. So that would be the mechanism to ensure that the differences between previously paid impact fees are reconciled with what's owed for the new use.
And that would be done through your department?
That's correct.
So once these applications are received for this conversion, we will be calculating the fees that are going to be going to the city and then also need to be sent over to the county.
That's correct.
And that's going to happen all in your department.
Yes, we do it every day.
I just want to make sure because I don't want us to miss that additional fee that's coming in, those impact fees and that additional levy that needs to come in for the city, because we need to collect every dollar possible with these applications and make sure that we're glad tight with this policy.
Understood.
Because I'm looking at this page here though, and I just don't see that outlined in this policy in regards to the impact fees. If you could take me there, maybe to the.
It wouldn't be there, though. It wouldn't be there. This is specifically for density bonuses, impact fees.
Density bonus, so, I mean, at least outlining in the policy that there's going to be a change.
It wouldn't
in
be
impact fee.
germane. In fact, you remember you guys voted on the impact fee increase, and I was the only one that voted against it?
Don't remember
So that's would have been the time to bring that up. You remember that, don't you?
Don't remember that at all.
What you said something?
I'm just saying, I got board members that's raising taxes all
Jermaine,
over the
Madam
place.
Chair.
I know,
Jermaine.
we're on something else right now.
Yeah, and I got a couple of things before we leave off this item.
Okay, we're going to let Mr. Lawson, are you done, Mr. Lawson?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much.
Madam Chair?
You are or you aren't done? Lawson?
I am done, thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Ms. Lanier?
I just also want to weigh in on the fact that we need adequate funding, and that can come from developer fees when it comes to staff, because as we are moving forward with building new city halls and trying to bring development in the city, we're going to have staff to be able to do that, and I do not want it to be as a part of the CRA or as a part of the CDC. It is something that needs to be in the Developmental Services Department to be able to monitor it and to be able to make sure that everything that comes to that department in terms of housing is looked at. So if we're going to talk about these impact fees and increasing them, it certainly needs to be something where we look at budgeting some of it for staff for the Developmental Services Department.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just make sure, check the room, and nobody else is going to try to jump in before I say something, because every time you look at me, I think you're calling me, but we go somewhere else. So first of all, let me respond to that. Impact fees are just that. That's for the impact on our current infrastructure. Those dollars can't be used towards affordable housing. That's the very first thing. Second thing is, Mr. Evans, I think this was a really robust and great dialogue to have. Perhaps another venue on a workshop probably would have been more appropriate, because we spent quite a bit of time, but I think we've gotten a good direction. One thing I did not hear that came up that I just found online was, can we incorporate TDR? And I know you have your housing czar over here, but if a person, right, for all intents and purposes, decides, okay, I'm going to go ahead and build the affordable units, do we need them around to build them? Can we get them to assign that development right over to our housing authority, over to our CDC? Because quite frankly, most people are in the business of doing development that makes it economically feasible. They specialize in high-rise development. not small one-off 12-unit projects. So I think certainly that's where we can utilize some of the other avenues we have in our community. So would transfer of development rights be something that we can add to this as well, Mr. Jonathan Evans?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
if I may, as part of the research, we'll look at that and see if there's any other policies that other communities have that allow for the transfer of development rights to other entities to facilitate the workforce component.
Okay, yeah, that'd be worth looking into, especially with supply chain. I mean, you finish a project, there's this expectation that it's supposed to do it simultaneously or perhaps come afterwards. We may be stretching these folks out for 5 or 6 years, when I think if we have agencies, which we do, that's already doing it. We got our 12th Street project underway. The housing authority is doing things, so, and we already have agreements with them, and, I mean, they are, in essence, CRA is at least a dependent district, and the housing authority is independent. My next question is, Mr. Sermons, right now today, February 15th, do we have a moratorium out relative to these items and developments?
Do we have a
And
moratorium
IHCPUD?
against what?
Any kind of developments inclusive of these zoning districts? Because, I mean, technically, someone can walk in the door and submit an application, because our code, as it stands, permits this. And that's a yes or no question, because I don't want to hear that staff is not accepting them, because we don't have that discretion. You have a ministerial duty. Do we have a moratorium in place that prevents someone from submitting an application for development, taking advantage of this MEHOP bonus?
No, we don't have a moratorium against MEHOP, no.
Okay, so someone can walk in theory, tomorrow with the completed application and submit plans and move forward?
As long as it doesn't include any of the components in this draft document, they can. But for example, the MEHOP ordinance that's currently on our books does not include IHCPUD. So we could not review an application that's submitted for IHCPUD with MEHOP bonuses.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, so are there, you have a question?
I just want to make.
Because remember, this is his first
Right.
reading, and he's now going to add a discussion section.
Well, I mean, just, briefly, I just wanted to make sure that, in terms of inclusionary zoning, I think that's a more fair and equitable distribution of mixed income housing. And in terms of the staff for developmental services for these types of programs, wherever it comes from, I think that we need to consider that in terms of when we get to our budget for that department.
All right.
Madam Chair, if I
Yes.
may. If it would be the board's pleasure to go with the concept that you discussed this at your meeting on the 1st, staff is recommending that you set the hearing for second and final reading on March 15th, and that allows for us to move forward with the advertisement requirements, because if we don't move in such a fashion, it will delay the adoption of the ordinance that much further as it relates to the advertisement requirements.
Do you need a motion
Okay.
for that? Do you need a motion?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Make a motion that we move the second reading of this ordinance to the March, what was the date? 15th meeting.
Second?
To approve the ordinance first?
All right,
Discussion?
yes.
I like March 1st
For what?
for the date.
For the second reading?
Yes.
And the discussion will take place when? The discussion meeting that he said we were going to put in the middle.
Oh, I guess right. We won't be back here.
Huh?
We won't be back here. Okay, that's fine.
So the 15th for the second reading?
But I like the first.
Okay, so we'll vote on this, and then,
No, I'm just putting it out there.
Oh,
Vote
okay.
on it, and I'm
All
not going
right.
to share the same vote as you, but okay.
I got it. What about the discussion? You don't want to have the discussion? Okay. All right, so the motion, and we have a second. Madam Clerk?
Councilperson Lawson,
Yes.
Councilperson Botel,
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy,
No.
Chair Pro Tem Lanier,
Yes.
Chair Miller Anderson.
Yes.
That vote passes with Councilperson McCoy dissenting.
All right, so now can we go ahead and take a vote for the first reading? We know that we'll have a discussion meeting on the 1st of March, and the second reading we'll notice for March 15th. Madam Clerk?
Councilperson Lawson,
Yes.
Councilperson Botel?
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy?
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Lanier?
Yes.
Chairperson Miller Anderson?
Yes.
That vote passes, Madam Chair.
All right, so we'll go to public comment.
Madam Chair, we have 11 public comment cards. At this moment, the acceptance of public comment cards are now closed.
All right, give me 1 second. I swear y'all switch this up on me every single meeting. I don't understand. Yes. I don't understand this. And this is the other one. Please be reminded, the City Council has adopted rules of decorum for public conduct during our official meetings, which has been posted at the front desk. In an effort to preserve order, if any of the rules are not adhered to, the City Council Chair may have any disruptive speaker or attendee removed from the podium, from the meeting, and/or building if necessary. Please govern yourselves accordingly. Madam Clerk?
Yes, Madam Chair, I have a public comment card. She was walking up as we were closing it, so I'll put this one as last.
Okay.
First is going to be Mr. Lloyd Brown, followed by Mr.
Wait, hold on. We don't have any, but we just got 2 people here. Everybody left? All right, go ahead.
Mr. Lloyd Brown, followed by Mr. Bill Willich.
We'll tell, can you close the door? Or somebody?
Is Mr. Lloyd Brown still present?
No, he's not here.
Mr. Bill Walitich, is it? Wolitich? Going once.
Okay, go ahead to the next one.
Miss Anna Vergney. And after her will be Mr. Travis Bethea.
All right.
I'm assuming Mr. McCoy and Mr. Lawson are not coming back, right?
Good evening.
Good evening. I stand here tonight to ask the chairperson and my district councilwoman, Ms. Krishna Miller Anderson, to do what she did back in 2018. She asked for a financial audit of the CRA and the city. And we would like for the city to do that, for your request to be not just placed, but actually done. When we speak of our city and we speak of terms of minorities and trying to foster minorities communities, we fail to do that every time I turn around. I applied for the audit committee, by the way. And I'm not blaming Elena, because if I can manage a budget for the court system to the penny, and I have 8 years of schooling, I don't need CPA after my name. My name was never shown. I never got a call. There was absolutely no response to my application. And it's time that the city stops selecting who they want, because I can audit just the same as any of you, maybe better than some of you. Going back to Lakeview Park, the change of this that the city staff is asking is, again, for the developers. It's not for us. Please feel free to put low-income housing in Lakeview Park instead of Rybovich. I beg you to do that. Please, bring it on. Leave Rybovich out of our backyard and put in low-income housing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Mr. Travis Bethea, followed by Ms. Paige Parker.
Good evening, everyone. Travis Bethea, 37 East 24th Street, Riviera Beach, 18-year resident. I addressed to the council in December talking about safety hazards in our neighborhood. Thank you for sending people out to start trimming the trees. There's still a lot more with the power lines need to be updated. I want to talk about the traffic light on 22nd Street. Rybovich is trying to take that as their main entrance, which they said they have 500 employees. Viking Yachts use the same one at 100 employees. There's about 300 residents in the neighborhood, and your new city hall is going to be across the street with 400. That makes a very busy traffic light. Rybovich could use 20th Street, change their plan to use that one as their entrance. Rybovich, off the record, said they had lunch with the city council.
You have to talk into the microphone. I mean, it's all on record.
Changing of the zoning. There is, what do they call it? There's a residential blocks they want to change the zoning to. I believe there is not enough affordable housing in the area, so why change residential? Let them build affordable housing on those areas. They want to close Avenue C. CRA states that Avenue C was supposed to be a thoroughfare through the city, extended, which they want to close. I don't know why. And also says that Rybovich's boatyard should be blocked by buildings. So the low-income housing on those blocks would help block the shipyard, what they're building there. For some reason, shipping containers are all over the city. You go to the boat slip, Rybovich uses shipping containers there, and it even seems like Lockheed is doing it on Broadway. I don't know why we do that. So with our neighborhood and everything going on, it would be nice that we'd be able to have a meeting with the residents, Rybovich, and the city being part of it. Every time they've had a meeting, there's never a posted notice, so it's only hearsay. Other residents want to go, but they can't because they weren't notified in time to plan it. I got 48 seconds. Thank you, guys. I hope everyone had a good Valentine's Day with their loved ones. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Ms. Paige Parker, followed by Mr. Peter, HR, V as in Victor, DA. Ms. Paige Parker? She went home? Okay, thank you.
Peter Ruda, 2305 Lakeshore Drive. Want to thank the committee and council for working with us, the community of Lakeshore, and helping us with Rybovich fine-tune some of the stuff. We still have a bit to do with the access, like Travis was talking about, access to the community. I do believe 20th Street is a main source. I do not want a wall put up in our community blocking us, isolating us between Blue Heron and Rybovich. I think it's alienating our community from them. I do know that there are some impact fees that are going for the development of Rybovich, and I would like to have the fees come to our community for redevelopment or improvement in our development. It's quite a big bit of money that is being granted in impact fees from Rybovich, and also would like to see something in the means of community development on the Broadway area with low income or some type of storefronts that accent our community to low income instead of having high income stores and storefronts in those new buildings in front of the city. I'd like to see something proposed that they are able to give restaurants and other stuff to that area in developing that whole front. And I know Viking's coming in there, and they're going to be taking up the whole entire storefronts on that area. I'd like to have some type of monies coming in for the development, for people to come up and outreach to give certain funding for stores for our low income housing and stuff like that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next will be Ms. Dolores Williams, Ms. Margaret Shepherd, and then Ms. Cindy March.
Ms. Williams, oh. Come on up, Miss Williams.
Don't just smile and be happy. Good evening
Good evening.
to the council and the mayor, Dolores Williams. I want to ask a question. The thing they were saying that you was going to help the people on the west side to get some of their houses renovated and all that, but yet it said it was a grant. But then as I read the line, it says it's not a grant, but it's a loan. Did y'all cancel that in 15 years lien on your property? I want y'all to clarify that for me. And my son live over here, my daughter work over here. Did y'all know Bright Line went straight through the crossing guard did not come down? You know they be doing 80 and 100 miles an hour. Did y'all know that this day, early this morning, by 7:30, 8 o'clock? Just think how many people might have got killed with Bright Line running through. And they got $25 million to improve their river. They've been out there working at and putting up fencing it off from one another. But are y'all getting money? I think someone told me the council is sponsoring this here for the home improvement here. Is that all of you coming up with that money, or the state helping you, or the county, what? And that's another thing. If we give you all our information and we're not approved, what you gonna do, keep all my personal paperwork to your office? And it's saying Revere Beach, it could be owned by Revere Beach. Y'all could be owning every house whoever went with that program in Revere Beach. Are y'all gonna let developers come in and take it away? We don't need that. And please, I know y'all might say, where's she going? Way back there. I want to know why y'all didn't name Blue Heron President Obama instead on this old Dixie, that old racist street. What's wrong with Blue Heron to put President Obama on our main, as they say, our main corridor? Okay? I want that to be changed. I hope it can be changed. And they came out to do some speed bumps for me. They put one big speed bump in the middle of the road, and everybody's down there. The speed, no school sign or flashing, but a big old speed bump almost in the middle of the road. The people still make the curve, boom, down 30, 40. What's that speed bump? One speed bump from Australia to Oak Avenue. You got a little sign thing they're talking about flashy your speed. Some people hit that cone and go straight down to 40 and 35. That's why the little kid got hit and went into the windshield. Look at that commercial. You need the hurricane windows. It crashed. That's how it crashed up. So let's make some change.
Thank you.
Miss Margaret Shepherd, Miss Cindy March, and then Miss Lady Goldwire.
Margaret Shepherd, Riviera Beach.
Good evening.
To the Honorable Mayor of this great city, and to all of you that came to Charette, Madam Chair, thank you. And of course, Mr. Lawson and his aide, Mr. Jack, thank you all. I think we did 4 Charettes already at Lakeview. And I thank you for your input of coming over just to listen. But I'm here for a totally different thing, Mr. Evans. First, thank you for clearing up the $10 luncheon. I appreciate it. They appreciate you. But I want to go back that I was out for a while. I had a dislocated shoulder. And I was out for 2 months, and I came back, and they had a little function on 10th Street. And they started talking about Christopher McCullough. Chris McCullough is a master gardener that you all paid for him to go to school. When they did the garden, they promised us, and there's an article at Lindsay Davis that was written by the Palm Beach Post talking about the garden club. And now I got word they were talking, and since I wasn't in the loop, no one called me. I was in shock when I was told he was demoted to go back to the ambassadors. You don't have to answer me, Mr. Evans, but I know that when they fired you, this whole city went into a mode I've never seen before. They brought you back. They say they're happy. You're doing things that never was done. But what I don't understand, that you have an old woman over these men. It was a group that came over talking about the men, the boys, and whatever you do. But it's demoralizing as a black woman to see another black woman demote black men. I have a problem with that. My daddy was born in the Bahamas, very strong black man. And the one thing he taught, that nobody walk over you. Get your respect. But he's an asset to us, Mr. Evans. I don't play cards. I don't play bingo. I like the garden. Whatever he taught me, if you come to my house, every flower in there, I learned from Christopher McCullough. I look at my neighbors' little plants and say, there's a bug there. They say, how you know? And I pull it over and show them. And then I go get my little contraption that he showed us and just put it all over the plants. I'm going to ask you real nice, Mr. Evans, just as nice as I can. Please allow this young man to continue 2 days out of the week. From 8:30 in the morning, I think he stayed there till 10. He is an asset to Lindsay Davis Garden Club. Thank you. And you all should be mindful of your young men that is in these positions and they become humiliated. And the one thing I learned from my dad, be responsible for who you are.
Thank you, Ms. Shepherd.
Miss Cindy March, followed by Miss Lady Goldwire and Mr. Winston.
Counselor. I'm
Good
Cindy March.
evening.
I don't know, I lost count hearing the word affordable, but I would like to ask a hypothetical question. What do you all call affordable for the value, the dollar value? I'm going to do everything I can with the help of a family member to get me where I need to be, because I want to be a participant with this low-income, affordable housing. Not only affordable housing we need, because everybody can't afford to own their own home. We need affordable rent. We need to put a stamp on this high rent, especially in the hood, and you got to live like you're in the hood. That's not acceptable to me. I'm a type of person, I'm good until I'm not good. And people think I'm wrong for doing some of the things that I do by turning to social media. It's not to bring anyone down. It's just to let people know, don't go through what I went through. And a lot of people don't know where to turn to for help. They don't know who they can go to, and you all cannot do but so much, because then it becomes a civil matter. But we shouldn't have to live any kind of way because we live in the hood. This is a city where everybody loves to live, work, and play. And just because you living good, don't mean that you don't care about your residents that voted you into office. You know, I have reached out to several people because I'm concerned, because I don't want to take matters into my own hand. But I have moved on. But I don't want it to happen to no one else. Ms. Evans and the rest of you all, I asked you all, do you all have a housing board committee? No one yet answered me. Do you all let the landlords come over and get a rental application and let code enforcement come over and inspect that apartment or that home before they rent it to a tenant? We work hard for our money. I've never been under housing. I've never been on a low income. Sometimes I would have to work 2 and 3 jobs to pay my rent, and I've been on my own for 40 years. So I was very devastated for what happened to me. But that's in the past, and like I say, I'm looking forward to do whatever I can do to own a piece of property here in the city of Revere Beach. But we first got to get away from the person vendettas, because we will not make it as long as we hating on one another. We have to lift our brothers and sisters up, just like Ms. Shepherd said. You know, she took it disrespectful to me, but she came back and was the bigger person and apologized, and that's the type of person I am. You might think I'm bashful because I talk angry sometimes. Well, I am angry because I advocate for you all. I go knocking on the doors. I have knocked on plenty of doors for over 30-some years to put you all where you all at. Then you forgot where you come from, for your own sisters and brothers. So I want you all to be mindful who put you all in these seats and who can take you out these seats. You don't have to be to our begging knees, but be decent.
Thank you. And Ms. March, Mr. Evans usually goes over the answers to the questions that were posed right after the last person. Yeah, okay, I think he did
Ms.
address it the
Lady
last
Gold-
meeting, though.
Well, can I get a copy of it?
Miss Lady Goldwire, followed by Mr. Winston, and then Miss Paula Doretta.
Good evening.
Good evening. First and foremost, Lady March Goldwire, and I want to regroup because initially I came up here to do this a little differently. First and foremost, I heard a lot of things in the audience, and I want to add just some suggestions. I think the affordable housing crisis that you're going to find yourself up against is going to require some creative thinking. I have worked with and been in the room with individuals from cities like Overtown and Miami, where they created programming where the city or the entity actually bought the materials for affordable housing. They housed them, they kept them, they were tax exempt. And then when they put the RFP out for construction, they put the RFP out based on labor cost only, labor cost and markup. And so since the city absorbed the cost for affordable housing, you had a situation where for the materials, you actually had an option wherein you could mark down the housing inventory considerably. That's the first thing. The second thing is, the city and we've been in a dance for quite some time, and I think, Ms. Shepherd, you made a good point. Mr. Evans, when you sued the city, you came before the body, and many of you up there championed for him to get his money. He was hailed a local hero for it, despite being or having to be paid out. I got a jury award of $60,000 that a few of you didn't agree with. You spend more on trash bags a year and paper clips than you do $60,000. You've paid out a substantial amount of claims, and I thought we were going to get to a space where it was going to be over, and then you guys lobbed a Hail Mary this Monday and filed a motion for a rehearing. Less than 2% chance of them overturning this. You asked 3 justices, or maybe you've asked the whole body, I don't know if you filed en banc or not, to go back and change their mind after they stewed over the decision for another 13 months and rendered a 17-page opinion. So the 3 of you are smarter than the senior judge, the jury, the appeal body, and the justices there, and now we have to do it again. I'm going to take full advantage in the event they say you got it wrong a 3rd time. And I am going to take the opportunity to showcase just how dumb it was for you guys to spend $191,000 on this last leg to keep me from getting the 60 that I fought for and won. You need to do better by me.
Thank you.
Mr. Winston, and last would be Ms. Doretta Paul.
Weston?
Winston?
Hey, I don't see him.
That's Chair Pro Tem's husband. He's not here.
Who's next?
Ms. Doretta Paul.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Doretta Park, and I would just like to inform Mr. Evans that the Reimagine Riviera Beach was phenomenal. The point that I was making at the last meeting is that the citizens of Riviera Beach did not realize, that's why I said if you could have some recs for the citizens of Riviera Beach, we weren't aware that we had to give the thousands of dollars to the developer. And if we can just have some dialogue concerning that, and I was just wanting to know if any other municipalities ever had this type of contract with developers and we don't even receive any tax money for at least 15 years. And then after that, 45 years after that, that's when a lump sum of several million would be given to the city. Has any other municipality ever had this type of deal with developers? I would just like to know that. And also, with our financial director saying this is not a good contract for the city, and it's like basically the whole board except for Mrs. Lanier realize that. I think this will impact our children, our grandchildren, and beyond. So I just would like to know if any municipalities have ever had this type of contract when we're giving up so much and we are getting, in return, so little. Another thing I want to talk about is the senior citizens. We had a Valentine's get together yesterday evening. It was phenomenal. It was very, very lovely. Now, when we say about the senior citizens and things that it's done for us here at the marina, it's done for the entire city of senior citizens, not just Lindsay Davis. And when I speak of prior, stating about the $10 that some senior citizens did not have, they didn't. A lot of our seniors are suffering, as I said. A lot of our seniors still have the blue tarps on their houses. And, you know, we just have to start considering those things. Ms. Park can provide for herself the $10, of course. But I'm just thinking about other people.
Thank you,
That
Ms.
has
Falk.
been my mission even in my
Thank you,
career.
Ms. Falk.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, that concludes public comments.
Okay, Mr. Evans?
Madam Chair, members of the board, with regards to the comments on an audit, obviously the city and the CRA are audited on an annual basis. If there is any perceived fraud, waste, or abuse, our internal auditor does have the ability to facilitate reviewing the documents or any information that persons would like for us to review. Also, as it relates to a forensic audit, that is something that if it's a policy decision of the board, we can certainly get a cost associated with that, but those are quite expensive. But nonetheless, if it's something that the board wants to consider, we can certainly do some research on that. The item concerning Safe Harbor and Rybovich came up. Obviously, they're going through a process, and that item has not made its way before the Legislative Policymaking Board to review and have discussion, and there is a pretty lengthy process that one has to go through to facilitate what they're proposing. We will look to facilitate a community meeting similar to that we have done for Lone Pine and other major developments to get some input and feedback from the community and just to hear their concerns and then share that information with you all. Obviously, we've heard from the residents concerning the conditions of the infrastructure in the surrounding area, and we've already begun the internal discussions about some infrastructure improvements that would be contemplated if impact fees are received as a result of the development. And so we've had some conversation, and we will have a more robust conversation with the board on March 1st when we talk about the Reimagine Capital Improvements Program and some of the roadway projects and other infrastructure projects that we have on the horizon. So staff has already began that discussion. On the question concerning the Renaissance program as well as the our Reclaim program, I'll make it a point that staff reaches out to both individuals and provides them information concerning the grant as well as assistance that's provided in the Home Buyers Club and how it can facilitate home ownership here in the city of Riviera Beach. The program, as you all know, once the board allowed for us to utilize $500,000 to assist, most of that money has been spoken for related to the program. So once we review all the applications, we'll be able to give you a more detailed report and then, if necessary, bring back an additional funding request to facilitate more investments in the community. I have gotten a couple of emails and phone calls concerning the testing that is being done on Brightline, and I'm going to personally make it a point to see what I can do to help facilitate better improvements at the intersections. They have Florida Highway Patrol out there, and they do have persons there, but if they're not attentive, it does provide for a public safety concern. And so I've gotten numerous videos and phone calls from residents, and so that's something that I'm personally going to try to resolve tomorrow. Concerning the housing board, we don't have a housing board per se, but we have partners that we work with. But one of the things that came up in the conversation that we're going to do some research and bring it back in possibly some form with the MEHOP is a situation where the oversight committee maybe has a situation where the board can appoint persons to serve on that committee to complement staff, so we can look for folks that have more robust development experience in the affordable housing space that can help round out the board and help us put together the plan that can come before the board for consideration. So that's something that we're going to do a little bit more research and hopefully have a discussion with the board concerning that in the next version of the MEHOP. There was comments about affordable housing and what are some options that we can look at. The option as a city acquiring the material or what have you, we certainly will review that. I think every and all options are on the table, and so that's some things that we're going to look at and see if that's a way to help facilitate some expeditious construction in the community and can make for some of the infill development that we've been trying to accomplish come to fruition. So that's certainly an option. The last item was a discussion about Marina Phase 2 and the TIF, the tax increment finance. That's the monies that are captured over the baseline amount that was established when the CRA was established. The question was, does other cities utilize the TIF or the tax revenue to help facilitate redevelopment? The CRA, its core function is to facilitate redevelopment and utilize economic tools to facilitate redevelopment. And so it is common that TIF is utilized for economic inducements to allow for projects to come to fruition. The reason that these monies were utilized is that if the TIF was not provided as a development enticement tool, there would not be a situation where the developer that we had that answered the solicitation would be able to facilitate the development. So in conversations with our consultants and after review, it was deemed that in order to facilitate that, it would be an investment of about $27 million in totality. However, over the life of the development, it's anticipated that the city CRA will receive about $126 million in ad valorem revenue, but also there is residual benefits that are provided for, you'll have 1,000+ people living within the area and their spending power and buying capacity, and then it will appreciate in value, and thus the properties adjacent to it will appreciate it in value. So this is a tool that's utilized in a lot of other government entities to help economic development opportunities. We've utilized some types of inducements with Berkeley Landing and other projects that we anticipate would need some assistance. So it's not outside of the realm of possibility. It's another tool in the toolbox that CRAs and cities utilize to help facilitate economic growth and redevelopment. Madam Chair, that concludes my comments related to citizen comments.
All right, thank you. Okay, item 11B. No, yeah, 11B.
Item 11B, Resolution 34-23, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, approving the renewal of a sole source contract with Axon Enterprises Incorporated for body-worn cameras, BWC, Taser Conducted Electronic Weapons, CEW, Fleet in-car video interview room recording systems and associated software and support platforms to include a fully functional digital evidence management solution, DEMS, for a term of 10 years, authorizing the mayor and city clerk to sign said agreement, authorizing the Director of Finance and Administrative Services to make payment totaling $5,641,823.50 and providing for an effective date. Madam Chair, we do not have any public comment cards on this item. The acceptance of public comment cards are now closed.
Motion to approve resolution number 34-23.
Second. All right, Mr. Evans? Oh, Mr. Chief. Chief, go ahead.
Good evening, council,
Good evening.
mayor, city attorney, Madam Clerk. This item is for the renewal of an expiring Axon contract. AC Madden will present the item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
As was stated, this is a 10-year contract to renew a contract with Axon that covers our body cameras, our tasers, our in-car video, and the digital management system that holds all of the videos produced by those systems. The total cost is $5,641,823. That includes a payment this year of $35,467, and then reoccurring payments of approximately $560,000 for the remaining 9 years. The contract does include a non-appropriation clause, allowing the city to terminate the contract if future funding is not approved. Yeah. I'm sorry, there was a slide for that. Moving on. We originally acquired Axon in 2018 under an RFP. Again, we use this for body cameras, tasers, fleet in-car video, and our interview room recording systems, and the digital management system that holds the video. These systems are unique and they're integrated with each other. When an officer activates their taser, it turns on the body camera and starts recording. When the officers turn on their lights in the police cars, it activates body cameras that are in the area, and same with the taser. If I turn on my taser and there's 2 officers standing by, it also turns on their body cameras so that we get as much of the scene recorded as possible. We gave a lot of thought into the 10-year contract with Axon. Axon is the leading provider of these products. It is widely used in the industry. Almost every agency in Palm Beach County is using Axon products. It allows for the sharing of information between the law enforcement agencies. It is the only digital management system in use by the Palm Beach County State Attorney's Office, which allows us to transfer our evidence back and forth between the State Attorney's Office. We've used these products for over 5 years. They have proven to be valuable in the review of police encounters. It is our recommendation that we continue to use Axon products for the next 10 years. There are some additional features that were added with this contract. We now have virtual reality training as part of Axon. The fleet in-car video adds automatic license plate reader technology to the in-car cameras in all 86 vehicles. We also have a digital portal that'll go on the website that allows for the collection of evidence from citizens in the community. And with this contract, although it's a 10-year contract, they replace our body cameras 3 times over the course of the contract. They replace the in-car video twice, and they replace the tasers twice. So it ensures that the officers have the latest available equipment. And we'll take any questions you may have.
All right, any questions or comments from the board?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, gentlemen. First thing is, Assistant Chief Madden, do you and your command staff wear body cameras?
We have body cameras issued, yes.
Oh, so you're not wearing one? That's in violation of a policy. In fact, I think we had a captain that had some issues with HR regarding a body camera.
It's not a violation of the policy. The policy does permit command staff and other administratively assigned personnel not to wear the body camera.
That's great, because that's where I was going. I know at least with our last police chief, we started the process doing accreditation. Why are those policies nowhere on the city's website for the public to view? I mean, what good is a policy if nobody's there to keep making sure that we're in check? No different than what I shared with our utility district director. If the very constitution and the charter of that district is not there, what's the purpose of it? Remember, regardless of what we're doing, we're serving a public purpose. So I think information and full disclosure, we have to have this stuff readily available. So that's my soapbox on that. But back to this contract. You know, you guys mentioned this yesterday. I think certainly I had concerns, and I think that's been resolved by Mr. Bill Sutton in his explanation about sole source. But, you know, I'm really interested in seeing the original solicitation and the respondents for our original solicitation, which would have been in 2018, because, you know, this is put together as an amendment, but then again, it's also offered up as a sole source. So, you know, the first thing is, was this solicited in 2018 as a sole source, or was this put out publicly? Because, I mean, we had to do this determination at some point that these folks are sole source.
Prior to the solicitation in 2018 was for body cameras and in-car video. The department was already using TASER, so TASER was adopted by the agency under sole source because it was the only product available. Then the body cameras came about after that. That solicitation was for body cameras and in-car video.
Okay, thank you. So a la carte, I believe, is what you're saying. We kind of pieced these things together as they became compatible.
Right. As we adopted more of their products, that's why this contract brings them all together under one single contract.
And this, I guess, is there any comparison? Is it better for us to get this as the package deal with all these various components and apparatuses?
Yes, we would not have the features that are critically important for officers in the field. If you're relying on an officer to remember to turn on their body camera in a situation where they draw their TASER or their weapon, because in this new contract, we're also adding to the officer's holster a trigger for the body camera. So not only when they pull their TASER, when we implement this contract, it will be on their firearm as well, so when a firearm is pulled, the body cameras will start recording. These features are not available if we use a different body camera or we use a different in-car video company. The products won't work together.
Okay. Do you have, or do you know that we have that 5-year solicitation 5 years ago, the solicitation from there? Because we have this unique access of having Demand Star, and just since we spoke yesterday, I went on, and to my surprise, there are a lot of vendors that offer body-worn cameras, and I'm just trying to figure out, is this something that Axon has proprietary lockdown as solely their own? Because there seems to be other games in town, if you will.
Yeah, we did, on that RFP, look at other solicitations that came in. There was other vendors that put in. Again, we did have TASER already at that point. I believe that was a factor in Axon winning that RFP back then. And over the past 5 years, their developments of the products have been, the industry's leader. So,
okay, good enough. And I can't say enough. I think we got to certainly put, our first responders out there with the equipment that they need. So certainly, I don't have an issue with it. I was just curious to find out if this is a better deal to get it all as a package, number one, and then secondly, if this is the only person that we can look to do this. And they provide full support throughout these 10 years, right?
Yes.
Okay, good deal.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
This Axon Citizen that allows for collection of digital evidence from the public, does that mean somebody can submit a video if they've seen something, or pictures digitally? And can it be anonymous from the public?
Yes, they can submit anonymously video, although, depending on what they're submitting, if that content is not anonymous, then obviously it wouldn't be. But whether it's photographs or video, that's what the portal is designed to receive.
So it's a web-based portal that
Yes.
somebody can just upload something to?
Yes, we already had, with our prior contract, the ability to send somebody a link. If we knew they were a witness and they said they had video, we could text them a link, and then they could use that link to supply the video back. This will just take it to a step that will be permanently on our website.
Thank you.
What type of educational awareness are you going to do in regards to that portal for the community? So
Yeah,
that they're aware of it and how to use it?
Yeah, when it goes live, we will, obviously cover it on social media platforms, get the word out. There are aspects of it that are like a video-based training that will be published along with it so people know how to use it. Their products are very user-friendly. We certainly will speak of it at our community engagements, our community policing events, HOA meetings, and so forth.
Okay, and then maybe it's possible to put that in the water bill? Mr. Evans, a message in the water bill?
Yes, Madam Chair, we can do that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Madam Clerk?
Councilperson Lawson?
Yes.
Councilperson Botel?
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy?
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Lanier?
Yes.
Chairperson Miller Anderson?
Yes.
That vote passes, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. 11C?
11C was deleted, according to my notes.
11C what?
That was put on a consent agenda.
Is that the one you guys
I
did?
thought 11A was the one that went on consent. Am I wrong?
11C was deleted.
Huh?
11C
There
was
was a
deleted.
4-1 vote to delete 11C.
You deleted the fire.
Oh, I didn't write that one down. Oh, that's the fire assessment one. Yeah, I got it. 11D.
Yes, ma'am. Resolution number 39-23, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Riviera Beach, Palm Beach County, Florida, approving the Director of Finance and Administrative Services to transfer funds from information technology surplus revenue to Project 22014 and approve payment for the outstanding invoices for the milestone payments and for annual maintenance support for fiscal years 2021 and 2022, totaling $447,236.44, and providing an effective date. Madam Chair, we do have public comment cards on this item. The acceptance of public comment cards are now closed.
Motion to approve resolution number 39-23.
Second. Mr. Evans?
Madam Chair and members of the board, if I can have the interim police chief, Mr. Joshua Lewis, to make this presentation.
All right.
This item will be regarding payment for past years of our Central Square, which is our RMS and CAD system.
Good evening again, Mike Madden, Assistant Police Chief. This transfer is to cover milestone payments and annual maintenance and support for our computer-aided dispatch and our records management system. This software was approved by the council back in 2016. The implementation took 18 to 24 months, which was longer than normal. With these products, the annual maintenance doesn't occur until after you've fully accepted the product. So since it took a little extra longer, you were talking almost about 3 years before we were to receive an annual maintenance bill. The company changed names in the process 3 times since we purchased the product. It didn't affect the services at all, but internally they had billing issues, and they had a billing error where they did not bill the city for maintenance and the final milestone payment. So the payments were not on the city's radar. Those budget years closed. At some point, their accounting identified it. They reached out to us, working with purchasing or the finance department and legal. They realized that these budget years closed and the city didn't have those funds just sitting there or building up. Therefore, they waived those fees that they didn't bill for all those years which totaled $390,561. We have received those services from the beginning. We used the product. It served us well. We've received the support and maintenance over the years. Staff recommends paying the $447,236, which is the annual maintenance for 2021 and 2022. They have since corrected their billing issues. We will be budgeting those funds moving forward, and the matter it should be resolved. And I'll take any questions you have.
Madam Chair.
Hold on, we'll go to public comment, and then we'll come back to the council.
Yes, Mr. Peter Yuta? Are you still here?
He left.
No?
Okay.
Miss
Mr.
Mary Brown?
Oh, go ahead.
That's the last of the public comment cards.
Okay.
Miss Mary Brown,
Good evening.
Rivera Beach. Apparently, I wanted to speak on the fire assessment tax here, okay?
This here is about the police. This is not the fire assessment. We took that off of the agenda.
She did say that it was taken off the agenda, and that was why I came over there to have a conversation with her. And she did say that I can speak on it. Now, I would not speak on it if it is not permissible. So,
Right, we're on
Where am I?
item 11D. We're on item 11D. 11C was deleted from the agenda.
yes, so see, I don't like to do business like this. I put the card in for 11C, and that's why I came over there and asked her. And she said that I can speak
Miss Smith,
in reference to under this.
regarding the police.
Regarding the police item.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. McCoy?
Yeah, what are we talking about? We're talking about fire?
We're
Central
talking
Square,
about fire, no, we're
fund
not talking about
transfers,
fire.
or payments? Because I'm kind of confused on all of them, and I'll tell you
Okay.
why to start off. So this item is ripe, Mr. Evans, for the internal auditors to review, and I'll tell you why. This involves going back over 2 fiscal years. Well, yeah, actually going back over 2 fiscal years. And number one is in the control environment, the highest, or one of the most riskier items that you deal with are management overrides, and this is exactly what this is. Regardless of whatever the reason is, if they fail to send us the bill, I would certainly have this reviewed. And I hope this is not urgent, or we're going to correct it tonight. This is being an issue that we need to address, because I can't rely on Randy Sherman, the finance director, to do it, because either he doesn't know or he doesn't care. I think it's probably the second one, that he doesn't care, because there's no way that we're going to be asked to come up with $447,000 and nobody even tells me where the source is. Meanwhile, in this same meeting, this is a meeting that we propose to reconsider a $3 million a year assessment. So the very first thing is we need to know the source of these funds, and that's not laid out in the resolution, nor is it laid out in the cover page. Secondly, this resolution is fundamentally legally insufficient. What is being asked of us is for us to pay someone retroactive, but the resolution title clearly speaks to transferring funds and not to actually the payment. So this is a textbook case of bait and switch. We're presenting this as one item, as a budget transfer, but when you read further into the documents, this document is authorizing something that's not even included in the resolution title. And for it to come before us at this point, again and again, and even more importantly, not even citing the source of these funds, make me really believe that there's something nefarious about this. And I don't support it. In fact, I want legal to tell us if we can take action on it, because as it stands right now, this is invalid and it violates Florida Statutes 166.041, that a resolution must state one title. Either it's a budget transfer or a payment. It can't be both. And if we're doing a transfer, we need to say where those sources of funds are coming from. That's all I have, and I'm waiting for a response from the attorney.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
You could amend the motion to include if the project number, according to 11D in the agenda, is 22014. If that is still the project budget number where these funds are coming from, you could amend the resolution to include that. I don't know if that's the case or not.
Well, I'm not sure that the chief or the assistant chief really knows where the funds come from, but this is a resolution that's presented. It should identify, like, nobody has $500,000 sitting around in their individual department account unaccounted for. If this is coming out of contingency, let's say that. If this is coming out of some other fund, let's say that. If it's coming out of surtax dollars. You know, it's like we're making decisions and we're only being provided a quarter or a scintilla of the actual facts and all the truth. And, you know, if any member on this board supports this item as is, you violate your oath of office. And that's why we shouldn't be, to the gentleman, the gentle lady from the south side, she's so eager to jump out and say motion to approve and don't even realize what you're doing is ratifying bad behavior by staff. I mean, we're $19,000 a year employees, and I seem to just by reading, and I don't know if it's because I'm very intuitive and pay attention to these things, but I'm really tired of making excuses, and we do this time and time again. It's 2023. At what point do we turn the corner with this and stop being so gun-ho about rubber stamping everything staff says? I don't know if you guys do a gender review, but I really do try to go in and address my concerns. And then they share something with me that I didn't know. I try to go back and review it again, and this is something that came up just since I met with the chief and the assistant yesterday, but this is not right. And let's stop doing this on the floor. I really want these folks to get paid. I don't want any interruptions in police services or the apparatuses that they use, but give me a break. Give me some cover and make this a fair process to a part-time legislator. So at this point, I'll offer an amendment to table this and let's bring it back another day. Let's not sit here and do what we did for MEHOP and hash out all these different things that should be corrected. That's my motion, Madam Chair.
So you have a motion to table?
Correct.
Mr. Lawson, you second?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Madam Chair, could I add some additional information?
Okay, go ahead.
We did obtain the source of the funds as listed from finance. I think it's important to note that we do have a contract with this company. That's the contract's in effect. So the payments are permitted for the services per the existing contract. So the only issue that we had was the source of the funds. It wasn't the authorization to pay Central Square because we have an existing contract with them that's in effect. So the item was simply to identify the source of the funds which we obtained from finance.
Follow up.
Go ahead.
And that's great that you know that, Assistant Chief, and what I'm saying is we don't know what it is. It's not included in here, and you don't have the funds, Chief. It's to the extent that they're budgeted, because the truth is, right now, neither of the 5 council people that's about to vote on this knows where the dollars are coming from, other than it was a transfer. And that's what I'm saying. It's about a process, certainly not about the product and the service that you guys provide, because if you needed something for $1 million, if it's going to save lives and stop crime. In fact, I got up in the middle of the night. Mr. Evans sent the email. I was trying to make sure that everything was all right because it bothers me when things happen in the city. And to the very point that you brought up to me yesterday, Chief, about the importance of having these equipments and apparatuses, like the one piece of equipment that we had on the agenda tonight that actually takes an optical scan. You know, I went right out there to find out on the crime scene, would this have been effective had we had it in place? And the answer is yes. So I want to be the first elected official to say, absolutely, I'm in total support of it. But I just want a process that's defensible. And what I have here today, I just can't support it.
All right, any other questions or comments regarding his motion to table?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Evans, what steps have we put in place to confirm that this won't happen again with these missed payments and invoices, and what checks and balances do we have?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Madam Chair, if I may, we've already had the internal conversations about the position that we currently have vacant is the contract administrator, and their role and responsibility through procurement is intended to monitor these particular contracts and to ensure that there's appropriate payment and that we're adhering to the contracts. And so we are going to build out an internal process that ensures that these particular situations don't become common practice. But I do want to also speak on the motion that's on the floor. Staff would support and ask for the board to support the motion that is on the floor to table this item and bring it back with a proper resolution stating where the funds have been budgeted for the purposes of facilitating the payment to the provider.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Boto?
Thank you. Well, I certainly agree with Mr. Evans. We can't vote on it. My concern would be, why is it written appropriately on the agenda itself, and the resolution doesn't match the language? How does that happen?
You know,
Hold on, Mr. McCoy. Was that a rhetorical question, or are you looking for an answer?
What?
Was that rhetorical, or are you getting
I
a?
guess it was really a question. I mean,
Okay,
I'd like
so-
to know, how does somebody write this up, which indicates that it's coming from project IT technology surplus revenue to project 2214, et cetera, and the resolution itself does not match the language? How does that happen?
Yeah, I was referring to the cover memo, which usually has the same heading as the resolution. I just realized that they don't have the same language.
Right.
So I can't answer that, why it ended up that way, but
All right, Mr.
so we do have the proper language on the cover memo, It just,
All right, Mr. McCoy. Did you still have something?
I just want to say, you know, I'm sorry because I get very upset because it takes a lot of work when these agendas get modified and now having to pause everything that we're doing to go back and review it. And then, you know, you still find out things are short. Respectfully, Councilperson Botel, let me apologize because I was wrong to say you're gung-ho because I know we're eager to get out of here, but, you know, I just really need a little help with this because I really want this to be a seamless process where we as elected officials can come in and we know that, you know, the time was taken and it was done, and not necessarily trying to point the blame at this point, because obviously we can all find something that, you know, that needs to be fixed, and let's just figure out a way to move forward. Is this a life safety issue that somebody's going to be compromised in the next 24 hours or the next 2 weeks?
no, sir.
Okay. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay. So do you want it tabled or postponed with a date? Do you want it to maintain, want
You
to
know,
keep it?
I'm sorry, postpone is better. They can figure out when they can resolve whatever issues and then provide us with the source of funds.
Second still stands, Madam Chair.
Okay. All
Madam
right.
Chair,
Yes.
that couldn't be answered tonight, where the funds was transferred from? Could
Of
that be,
course. I mean,
could y'all tell us tonight?
They
Yes, sir.
should,
Yes.
no, I mean,
Yeah, the cover memo to the council actually states, asking for, the resolution asks for the Director of Finance and Administrative Services to transfer funds from the Information Technology Surplus Revenue to Project 22014 and approve the payment for outstanding invoices and milestone payments. And I believe the clerk can correct me if that's what was read into the record.
It is.
Yes.
So somehow the resolution in the backup doesn't have that language, but
Madam Chair,
yes.
what is the technology surplus revenue?
I would have to defer to the finance director for that.
And you're really great with that question, Mayor. I just didn't want to put nobody on the spot with it. It's like, because, you know, if we don't, we should know. It should be easily obtainable. And what that balance looks like after we take out $400,000.
Good evening, Randy Sherman, Finance Director.
Good evening.
So we run the IT department and the fleet department and the insurance department all as separate internal service funds. So they get an appropriation, everybody contributes to those funds, and then IT, in this case, pays all of the IT costs around the city. So their individual funds have their own surpluses and fund balances. So in the past, we've come back for fleet. When we needed more money for fuel, fleet has a surplus, we can appropriate their individual surplus. So it's not coming from the general fund, it's coming from their individual. So in this case, IT has a surplus, we'll be able to take that IT fund, move it into that 22014 account, which is our IT master plan capital account, and then pay this invoice out of that account.
Okay, does that answer your question?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
How much is in that account?
How much is in there? Well, we haven't closed the books for last year, so we had about 400, and I think it's about 440,000 from the prior year, and then obviously to that will be what we add in for this fiscal, or for fiscal '22, once we get those numbers all audited and closed.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, follow up.
Yes.
Mr. Sherman, that's interesting. We haven't closed the books. In fact, I was listening to the audio recording of the audit committee, and you told the members of the audit committee the books are closed and you're awaiting the auditor. So which is it?
Well, the books are closed. We're waiting.
Closed now?
Yeah, they're closed now.
Because you just told the mayor they're not
No,
closed.
but they're not audited, so we don't actually, we do a soft close on the books.
Soft close?
Because if the auditors come up with anything, we obviously, we can go back and post anything the auditors might find. But the books are closed. I mean, shoot, we're into February right now. We're not doing any 2022 transactions.
Okay, I have some outstanding invoices for shirts I haven't paid. I'm still safe to do that, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Okay, thanks.
I'm sorry, okay.
Appreciate it.
All right, and
I mean, because, I said that jokingly, but let me just elaborate on that a second. Mr. Sherman, I said I still have some outstanding invoices that I haven't paid. I'm still able to do that. And I don't even know why I'm asking you that question, because clearly what we have before us is we paying expenses from previous fiscal years. So I don't know that you can tell me no if we're doing the same exact thing for the police budget right now. So thank you for answering that question.
anyone else? All right, so we're with postponing, or are we going to move
Postpone.
forward? You still, okay. So he has a motion on the floor to postpone to when?
Whenever they come back. I mean, we don't have to set a time certain date when we postpone.
Madam Chair, we can have this prepared for your March 1st meeting.
Okay, so postpone until March 1st. Madam Clerk?
Councilperson Lawson,
Yes.
Councilperson Botel,
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Lanier,
Yes.
Chairperson Miller Anderson.
Yes.
That vote passes, Madam Chair.
All right, item 13, discussion by city manager.
I have nothing, Madam Chair.
All right, for discussion by city attorney.
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
City council committee reports.
Nothing.
All right, statements by the mayor and city council. Mayor,
No comments, Madam Chair.
Mr. Lawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The homebuyer course for the city, first-time homebuyer or the City Homebuyer Club is going to be having a Zoom meeting tomorrow, and then they're going to be having an in-person meeting this Saturday. So please check out the city website just to participate in the homebuyer course for all first-time homebuyers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, Mr. LaCroix.
Yes, Madam Chair. I'm going to read a couple names, and then I'm going to bring this in to tie it all in together. And it's in light of some stuff that we heard tonight. Carla Lewis. Should sound familiar. She's with Gallagher Bassett Services. Don Stevens, trial attorney, who defended the city of Riviera Beach. Don Wynn, our city attorney. Steve Shields, our risk manager. And Ambridge, our carrier, who provided a very extensive letter to us on October 7th that labeled and laid out the fact that they were not providing us any more coverage related to the Goldwire v. City of Riviera Beach case, and that any expenses we would have to then incur if we chose not to pay the $60,000. Now, what's very interesting is that letter was in October of 2021. Here we are probably 14, 15 months later, and we're still accruing interest on a $60,000 judgment and a trial court award of $146,000 in attorney fees. That's just at the trial level. And all those individuals that I named actually told us and recommended that we settle this action. We've been through this now for the last year, and I know we had closed session on this, and I want to make sure that I'm very specific and direct with what I'm going to ask, but, you know, it seems to be that we keep going down this line of how much is too much. Like, you know, even at this point, we've already accumulated attorney fees for appellate proceedings in the Goldwater v. Riviera Beach. In fact, it's actually the cross appeal. The appeal was actually the Riviera Beach versus Goldwater because the city took the first action in filing an appeal. And based off of the 11th Circuit 17-page order, and I see everybody's packing up, cool. I'm going to put a motion that we go ahead and enforce the 11th Circuit's order and opinion so that we can go ahead and close out this case, because what we're seemingly doing here is we're adding more and more attorney fees, and I'm going to ask that we go ahead and enforce this 11th Circuit order and opinion and direct Denise Blue and her firm to terminate, and we settle this case and move on, because at this point, we have already experienced probably close to $350,000 of expenses that are going to be for attorney fees for appellate level, our attorney fees, even at the appeal level on its own. So at this point, this one case is going to cost us $1 million if we continue to let this ride out. You know, not to mention, like, we don't have unlimited flows of money. We're coming up into a budget year where there's going to be some very strict austerity measures, which I've heard before and I've not seen, but I certainly think we need to move forward, and that's my motion. I'm going to ask the board to certainly consider this, and let's bring this in and close this out.
Second, and if you'd like to read it into the record so you can be very clear with the motion so that it can understand what's being seconded.
Sure. I motion to enforce the 11th Circuit order and opinion, putting Ms. Goldwater back in the position of the $60,000 judgment plus the attorney fees that she's incurred and already been awarded. And I guess that goes without saying, the additional attorney fees from the appeals court.
Second. And if we can have discussion as well, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I would have to co-sign my colleagues' sentiments, and just enough is enough. We've sat back and continued to watch and allow for this to drag on when I've sat here in front of this dais on this board and just had motion after motion and settlement come across this board through consent. Enough is enough, and we need to move forward and move on to allow this young lady to continue to move on with her life and the city to be able to close this out, because this is just unfair to this individual. So please, if we can get this vote and move on from this as a city and begin healing.
Any other questions or comments?
Yes, Madam Chair. I echo the sentiments of my colleagues. This is taxpayers' money. And for $60,000, as Councilman McCoy said, we're going to be out of hundreds of thousands of dollars that I've seen cases come up here and fly by that we give them the money. I know we say it's not personal. If it's not personal, let's do right. Let's move on, because this isn't right. And the public needs to know that we're making, it was 2 or 3 judgments that already went by. The judge say we ordered $60,000 and we keep turning it for personal gain or whatever, right? Let's do right. Let's do right by her. Let's do right by the system. And let's do right by our residents, that we're not spending money. We claim to be watching over what we spend. It's the community's money, it's the residents' money, but we're showing them different right now, because I think it's personal, and I think we need to let it go and do right. The judge has already awarded us $60,000. Why are we gonna keep paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for $60,000? It makes no sense. So I agree with my colleagues. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Well, my comment is that we did have a closed executive session, and so all of us were present, I believe, maybe except for Mayor. I don't think you were there that day. And I don't believe, Mayor wasn't there that day. So when we had those conversations, as we know, when we have closed executive sessions, that stuff is supposed to be kept in the room until we are over with the case. And so I've already discussed it during that time, and I'm not going to discuss it publicly. Any other questions or comments?
Yes.
Yes.
And what's your understanding of what needs to be kept confidential? Because what I've asked for is not a strategy regarding litigation expenses. I asked to settle this action and enforce the opinion. So maybe you have a different understanding of how this works. In fact, you know, I specifically read Chapter 119 as it relates to shade meetings and closed sessions. There's no requirement like a mediation that it has to be confidential, because certainly that's carved out in state statute regarding mediation. That's not the same for closed sessions, man. It's not a public record, but there's nothing in there that says that we can't come out of there and settle some action publicly. And that's what I'm offering to do.
All right, any other questions or comments? Madam Clerk?
Councilperson Lawson?
Yes.
Councilperson Botel?
No.
Councilperson McCoy?
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Lanier?
No.
Chairperson Miller Anderson?
No.
That vote fails, Madam Chair.
All right, any other comments?
Sure.
Dr. Botel, you have any?
Sure.
We're
Okay,
at the
so
You have
Mr.
any
Evans,
points.
who's,
You have comments still?
yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So are we done with the fire system, Mr. Evans? Because I would hope that that doesn't come back.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
That's a conversation I'm going to be meeting with each of the board members individually to share with them what are some potential options, and then see what the pleasure of the board may be.
Okay. And I want to say thank you, Mr. Evans. I know I shared with you concerns and also to staff about having a uniform procedure when it comes to ordinance and resolutions, and I think we've started seeing that. I know for Mr. Sermon's item, it's a little bit tough to do because he has all kind of charts and graphs and that sort of thing, so it's not easily put together, but I think it really helps. And, you know, it would have been a little bit easier if we were able to point to specifically what line, but he, you know, development services ordinances take on, you know, their own pattern, but thank you for that. And I just want to say it really does help in terms of getting this together. I just want to make sure that we're spending more time in making sure that these items are ripe, R-I-P-E, before they come to city council, with sufficient backup and those kind of things. So thank you so much for that, because I see, you know, it's certainly noticeable that we're trying to make strides to make this a more efficient process. To that point, right, I so happened to get a pair of pants ripped when I was in your department yesterday, and one of your staff members told me I had no business looking what was on the shelf. But one of the things I came across was the item relative to travel. And I'm looking at some things in this travel budget that doesn't even align with where we are. Like, for instance, per diem. If you chose to travel on city's business, per diem is set at $150 a day. I don't think you're going to walk into a lobby of any hotel in all the United States for $150. So if I opted not to use the city card, and I chose to be reimbursed, literally, that's not even comparable. That was last revisited in 2013. And the point that I'm making is I would like to see, not just from the terms of the travel policy being updated, because that's way behind. And members, I know this may not seem like it's very important, but when I've literally traveled on city business, the $60 that we get absolutely goes nowhere in terms of when you go to a conference. When we went down to Hollywood, I'm not kidding you, one breakfast was $40. Our per diem allowance for breakfast is like $12, if that much. It might have been $6 or something, but I'm just like, it just doesn't work. And it's costing me to do city's business. And I don't think that that's the way it was set up and intended. And partly because some of these items haven't been revisited in over 10 years. That was in 2013. Certainly, I would like to see that, coupled with the fact, and I wanted to offer this up as a motion, that we also review the car allowance as well as the salaries, and ask our manager to bring back us some comparables, because clearly insurance rates are through the roof. I just got a renewal, and literally I'm probably $1,500 more for this 6 months than I did before. And it's just like, I want to make sure that we're not being placed at a disadvantage for already doing a public service that we are here for. So, Madam Chair, I would like to also offer up those items such as travel, car allowance, and salaries, that the manager bring us something back comparable so that we adjust it. Because, you know, over the years, we've done adjustments almost every year for COLA and other items. So I would like to see that we have the manager direct him to bring us something back. That's a motion, Madam Chair.
Is there a second? Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any questions or comments? Madam Clerk?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So you're just asking the manager to examine this issue and bring back some suggestions. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Councilperson Lawson? Councilperson Botel?
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy?
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Lanier?
Yes.
Chair Miller Anderson?
No.
You said no?
No.
That vote fails.
No, it passed.
How is that? You had 3-1.
Did Mr. Lawson vote?
No, he's not there.
No, is he here? No, he's not here. It was 3-1.
Must was Sarge.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, that vote passes.
All right. All right, that's the end of your comments, Mr. McCoy?
Thank you, Madam Chair, that's it.
All right, Ms. Chair Pro Tem?
Yes, on Friday and Saturday, February 24th and 25th, the Florida Mission of Mercy, in conjunction with the Florida Dental Association, they have one of these events every year, but in different locations in Florida, and it is free dental care. They have all of the dentists from across the state to converge in one place. It'll be at the South Florida Fairgrounds. I've been working with this Mission of Mercy to be able to escort City of Riviera Beach residents. They will have treatments such as cleanings, fillings, extractions, limited root canals, pediatric dentistry, dentures, partials, and all free. And they're going to be there on that Friday and Saturday from 7 to 7. If you want more information about it, if you want to attend it, and of course, everyone knows how expensive dentists and dental work is. You can call 561-845-3687. And that is for the free dental care for the City of Riviera Beach. Also, too, I think Mr. Evans made a comment in regards to one of the residents' issue regarding the marina, and he said that a lot of other cities do this type of deal, but that is not true. No city gives up 80% of their TIF for 15 years. That's never happened. So that was not true. And then also, too, I want to make sure that the chair ensures civility by council members. And, you know, Mr. McCoy should have been checked saying that somebody was my husband out loud. And that is just not supposed to be decorum and civility in how we're supposed to do business. By the way, he is not.
All right, I don't have any. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I do.
Oh, I thought I skipped you?
No, didn't ask me, so.
I did? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. A couple of quick things. I wanted to thank Walter Stevens for a wonderful concert last night. Was it last night only? Yes. It was amazing. The music was amazing. He's a great DJ, but the band is really good. The bands are always good. Thank you, Walter. The next one is March 16th from 7 to 9 p.m. It's free. Come on over, and here's what? 30th. Oh, crumb, I'm not here. March 30th. I thought they were the third Thursday. March 30th from 7 to 9 p.m., and they're free. The music is great. The Managed Mooring Field Town Hall meeting is on February 27th, right here, starting at 5:30. So if you're interested in learning about the managed mooring fields in the lagoon, please come to that meeting and get the answers to your questions. And if you're looking for ways to celebrate Black history in the Palm Beaches, there's a great website with all kinds of activities going on for the month of February. The website is www.thepalmbeaches.com/blogs/celebrate Black History Palm Beaches. And there are a number of suggestions, one of which will take place right here in Riviera Beach on February 19th. It's part of the second annual Black Looks Picnic and Music Festival, and it will be at 5 p.m. on Peanut Island, from 12 to 5 p.m. on Sunday, February 19th. Enjoy fun in the sun on Sunday with Frenzy. It's a day filled with kayaking, snorkeling, and other activities on Peanut Island. And that's all I have. Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
If I may, to the Vice Chair's point, my comment was regarding TIF, that TIF has been utilized, not the amount and the percentage that TIF has been utilized. So I just want to provide clarity that TIF has been utilized, but the percentage, that's certainly something that's different.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right.